don't like. Listen, Mark, I don't like Stanley. I think the only person I have been was Stanley.
And Nate, Stanley doesn't state the obvious, like what the F. He's used talking points. Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
The nature of American culture, it's a white people problem. Okay. I literally said they need to understand
that people bother you like that. If they want to beef with you, it's called Stanley versus the world.
And just assume their character by stereotype?
I think people do that every day.
Okay, I didn't ask you. What do I think is okay?
What do I like? What I remember being unsure of is who seemed to be able to have the arms to be able to bear it.
See, that to me is powerful, you know. I mean, the actors to have that kind of certainty or self-regard or clarity about self. And you know, and to have that in a house with such a powerful personality as your father.
Which is what I really think so disturbed him.
Right. That because in my house, right, the stair sent a shudder.
Yeah, same here.
Through the bone.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And the thing I remember more than anything is finding, you know, I almost burned the house down once because I was reading this, you know, Terry Brooks's The Sword of Shannara. I love fantasy literature. And I was reading Terry Brooks's The Sword of Shannara under the bed with a candle. What the hell?
Right.
With a candle.
Right.
Because I didn't want anybody to find me.
Right.
And I would escape into these worlds.
Yes.
Right?
I hope he understands that sounds about as stupid as a kid can be. Why didn't they have flashlights in your day? He's roughly my age.
Or my friend who moved from New York to Moss-Point, they tried to save him from the city, and they moved him to Moss-Point. And you know, he came down with his colored jeans and his fat shoestrings and Adidas and his Gazelles, and suddenly I wanted to be from New York. And so there was this kind of imitation. And the imitation was a reflection of a deep uncertainty.
Absolutely.
But it's all kind of trailed by, here's the thing, trailed by a sense of calling. That I don't know who I am. But I know I'm supposed to be doing something. And
profound.
So how does one align these things? And the only constant were the books and my mouth.
Let me tell you how profound this is, right? And I don't want us to get wound up because, you know, we'll get 3 hours in here, you know. But what's so profound about what you're saying, Eddie, is when I was maybe 12 or so, I went and spent the night with, you know, the friend, you know, as kids do, whatever.
No, we couldn't spend that.
Well, this one time, Daddy said I could go. And I didn't stay. I came home, right, which is why the story is profound to me now. But I went to his house, really wealthy white kid, right? So certainly middle class, upper middle class. So in many instances, his world, right, they were wealthy. I saw the wealth. But what's so profound about what you're saying to me now is what I remember at his house is the materiality, right? And I remember in some instances being envious of this materiality. He had his own bed. He had like 3 siblings. He had his own bedroom. Who the hell has their own bedroom? What child has their own bedroom? Because we, you know, growing up in the house with all this, that was just inconceivable. But what was so profound that I realized is he had the materiality, but I did not prefer any of the substance. The plates were prettier, but that dressing wasn't better.
He didn't have a taste.
It was not better than grandma's dressing in this tin pan, right? His mother had made, I'll never forget, she had made a cherry pie. That was the sorriest cherry pie I'd ever tasted in my life, but it looked good. It looked good. But when I bit into it, I was like, no, no, sir. No, sir. You don't mean this. You know, I went to church with him. It's a white guy, actually. I went to church with them, and gorgeous cathedral. But that music wasn't right. I was like, you can't shut off that. And I just remember having this profound sense of the substance is not better, but it looks better. And I was like, oh, that's how they fool you. That's how middle class, like that's how they get the poor people to just, right, because you want all the kind of the accoutrement of class. Right. But the substance of it was so unappealing. Right. And I'm saying that to say I think that's probably one of the reasons I ended up coming to Clark. Because I knew, of course, that the salary was paltry. I knew that when I started. Right. But I really believe the possibility that the substance of things hoped for, right, was going to exceed what I thought I'd be missing materially. And here's why. I've always talked about my frustration of not making the kind of money at Clark that I would have made if I'd been at some other major school. And it's true, it is true. But it's not because I was hungry. It's not because I was actually missing something. It's because in comparing myself to others is where I would come up short. But not in what I actually needed. Right? All my bills were paid. I thought I should have other money because my colleagues are making this kind of money. Right. So I should too. Right. But it wasn't because I didn't have lights. Right. And so I remember this was maybe right around 2000, 2005. I said, I'm frustrated comparatively speaking. Am I frustrated in my spirit? And when I realized there was absolutely nothing that I needed, there was nothing that I needed, but I did want it. I wanted it. And I thought I should have it. Of course. And to be clear, I still think I should have it. Right. But it wasn't because I was actually missing something. Right. It was because I wanted the same applause that I felt like my peers were getting. But there was something about the substance thing that has always kind of helped me, right? Because in my head, now what I'm clear about is, I don't need the streets paved with gold. I don't need that part. There's one time when I sung about that, dreamed about, I don't need the streets paved with gold, right? But I want the Black music.
Right. No, I hear you.
Yeah, I want that Black music.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
And it's a complicated kind of thing, right? It's a complicated kind of thing. But what I'm appreciating about so much as you're talking is this notion of awareness and identity and how one constructs one's identity, right? That's a lifelong project.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's important, as friends, right? I mean, the beauty of this conversation, right? I mean, I think we knew in those early days that we were going to do something.
I think so too, but we didn't know what it was.
We didn't know what. We knew we were walking differently than everybody else in that department.
Oh, for sure. And I always felt that about Greg too.
Right, exactly. We knew we were going to inhabit this space in a way that would be significant. We didn't know the substance of it yet, or what would be its content.
But see, God was brilliant not to tell us. I'll run out of this room so fast. Listen, God was brilliant not to tell us. Because
it's I think it's on one level, right? The process, the journey.
Absolutely.
Right, is so important.
Absolutely.
It's so important.
Absolutely.
I remember when I was writing Begin Again. I tell this story all the time. BJ knows this story. And I signed the contract. And my mama, she called all my books paper. When you go finish that paper?
That paper.
When you go finish that?
Listen, get your lesson.
When you go finish that paper.
Get your lesson out.
But she said, I couldn't get it going because I wanted to write this intellectual biography, and Baldwin's papers had been embargoed for 30 years, and so I couldn't get hold of certain things. I was working in the papers in Schaumburg. I did all this stuff, and I knew I needed to start. And I was at my computer, and the sentences weren't coming.
Mm-hmm.
And Reverend Barbara of the Poor People's Campaign had sent me a saint's candle of Baldwin. And I would light it every time I would pour myself a glass of Jameson. And I was drinking my Jameson and I had it there. And then I heard Jimmy's voice. And it was like, if we're going to do this together, old boy, you're going to have to deal with you. You're going to have to deal with you.
Wow.
I heard it like it was right.
That
Like
man
it was
believed
right
that.
there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what it required was to understand and was to encounter, to sit with the fact that I'm still a frightened little boy,
That's what's he.
right?
Yeah.
And what does it mean to grapple with that
Absolutely.
on the page?
Absolutely.
If I had known, if God had told me,
We wouldn't have done it.
I could have never made it to that
Absolutely.
moment.
I know I believe that. Absolutely.
So you see,
Absolutely. Now, here again, God was brilliant. Because if God had shown me this journey, I'd be over there.
you wouldn't have
So
took it.
I would not have taken it.
You wouldn't.
I would not have taken it.
You wouldn't have.
I'm telling you, if God had shown me I would not have taken it. But it has been completely exhilarating. But what it has cost has been something so it costs everything, right? But every journey does.
Say more about that. What is your cost?
No journey is really worth taking unless it costs you everything.
Come on.
Right? That's not even a journey. That's a trip.
Woo. Boy.
Well, listen. I'm trying to look at this time. I'm trying to count us down.
Journey is a trip.
All right.
So those costs, those risks that cost.
Yeah, but I do believe that. Yeah, I think the point of a journey is so that at the end you don't recognize the beginning, right? So you don't know what you look like, right? It's the whole kind of caterpillar butterfly thing, right? By the time a butterfly is fluttering in the air, it's probably hard for that butterfly to believe that they were actually once confined to the ground, and now you're in the middle of the air, right? Which is why nobody gets to experience the cocoon. Nobody ever knows really what happens in there. But the caterpillars and the butterfly, they look so unalike. Like this came from that, right? If you took your eye and looked, there's no way you can get that out of this.
Yeah.
No way. But not only can you, you must get that out of this, right? And I think that's what a journey is. I think a trip is just movement. I think a journey is transformation.
So I think, I want to connect that to something you said earlier that really sat with me about, you described it as Black Revolution, but it was something much more. Because it's the journey, right, in which one risks everything, the costs
That's
are
right.
what they are.
That's right. That's right.
But you describe Black Revolution as a liberation of all, right? As a liberation that isn't limited, but a liberation from that which in some ways confines the heart.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Right?
That's right.
That leads us to look, right, upon another in ways that diminishes,
Yes.
that denies the power of love in some way.
Yes.
So in some ways, the journey itself, right, is requisite for the kind of work that such liberatory practices demand.
Absolutely.
You see what I mean? So, because
Absolutely.
if we don't make that move,
Absolutely.
and we're living in the wounds are unexamined. The wounds are moving us about.
Right.
I remember having dreams where I whooped my daddy's ass.
Oh, listen, did you
Me
hear
and him would
Go.
locking.
Absolutely.
And as soon as I was about to win, I would wake up.
Yeah.
You know, it's a therapist would have
A
a
field
field
day.
day with me.
Absolutely.
But there's something about the kind of healing that eventually happened that opened up space for something different to happen on the page.
Yes.
For
Yes.
something different to come out of the tone.
Yes.
You know, how would a musician would say this, there's a different sound in my horn
Yes.
as a
yes,
result. It
yes.
has a different kind of timbre there.
Yes. Yes.
It ain't just technically right.
Absolutely.
Has some depth and texture to it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It
So
makes
the journey, as opposed to the trip, is necessary for the kind of liberatory practice you call
must happen. Must happen. And I think that's exactly what happened to Baldwin. Because I think Baldwin made the journey. I think most of Baldwin's contemporaries just took a trip.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Stanley versus the World. Please make sure you hit the like button. I don't know. I guess my only comment about this video is I bet both of them wear cologne. Not quite sure what that was about. The title was promising, liberation or material wealth or something like that, but I don't know. I don't get what it was about. Maybe I guess I could watch the whole conversation, but I'm afraid to do that. So Slick, you got me curious now. So what do you mean RLM was the prize? Do they live near each other? Are they supposed to have a date? Because he's on the West Coast. I don't know where RLM is. So you win a dating contest. I mean, surely there must have been a prize. And if RLM is the prize, for some reason, I thought RLM was married. But I guess I'm mistaken. So, Pete, give me details. What does that really mean? Do they date? Do they get to go out? Oh no, I heard about the dating contest and I even watched a couple minutes of it. I'm not a big fan of those internet dating shows. I think they're a waste of time. Unless you are actually in the same city or something like that. But I don't know. It doesn't surprise me that Nightish won. I think he didn't have much competition for starters. And he's very witty. He's very verbal, which is pretty impressive. So I don't know. Maybe I'll go back and watch it, or I watched Nightish's show. Now, let me put it to you this way: Nightish did not do a show overnight. Usually, he does. So maybe that's the reason. Maybe she lives on the West Coast. She is Hispanic. Maybe she lives on the West Coast. That would be pretty awesome, though, wouldn't it? So let's see. What else do we have? I just kind of have a grab bag of stuff. I can't imagine this will be a long show. But I did have some things that were kind of left over that I just didn't, I'm kind of overdoing these marathon shows, maybe on a Saturday when people are coming up to the panel and it's entertaining. But, after a few hours, I actually bore myself. Nightish for sure, Deacon Dave. Funny, I'm surprised you would ask that question, to be honest. Well, and this is actually, Deacon Dave, that is a good question. It's not so much that neither of them have the gift of gab. Their internet reputations are different. And I know RLM does go on John Galt's, I think I've seen her in the chat before, but John Galt, he's kind of a different animal. Nightish, actually, I've seen Nightish a little tipsy on his YouTube show. He's one of those guys, he will either fall asleep or he actually gets funnier John Galt just fucking he crashes out when he's been drinking too much. He just fucking crashes out. It's not a good look for a 50-year-old man, to be honest. So anyway, this was, I guess, in today's New York Times or yesterday's. Federal layoffs and an end to diversity initiatives have weakened a historically strong labor market for Black workers. And I want to listen to most of this. This looks like LA or somewhere. And funny, it should be a picture of this particular lady. You'll see why in a few minutes.
Black unemployment is surging again. This time is different. This article is by Lydia DePillis and read by an automated voice. Joblessness for Black workers is rising again, 2 years after reaching a record low. It's a troubling indicator. Joblessness often spikes higher for historically marginalized groups during economic downturns and takes longer to fall. This time, the Trump administration's assault on diversity programs and cuts to the federal workforce could make it even more difficult for Black workers to recover when conditions improve. The African American unemployment rate has surged over the past 4 months, from 6 to 7.5%, while the rate for white people ticked down slightly to 3.7%. On top of a slowing economy, the White House's actions have disproportionately harmed Black workers, economists said. I think the speed at which things have changed in such a dramatic fashion is out of the ordinary, said Valerie Wilson, who directs the program on race, ethnicity, and the economy at the Economic Policy Institute, a left-leaning think tank. There's been such a rapid shift in policy rather than something cyclical or structural about the economy. At least since the 1970s, when the federal government started tracking unemployment by race, the rate for Black people has run about twice the rate for white people. Because of inferior educational opportunities, the legacy of mass incarceration and discrimination over generations, Black people confront greater challenges in the job market. A strong economy during President Trump's first term created more jobs for Black workers, but many of them were lost when the COVID-19 pandemic hit in-person employment particularly hard. Generous public subsidies, though, cushioned the blow, and hiring rebounded quickly. In 2023, conditions for Black workers looked as healthy as ever. Unemployment reached a low of 4.8%. Wages rose at their fastest pace since data collection began in the 1990s, and median Black household wealth reached the highest level on record. Conditions started to deteriorate in 2024 after pandemic-era subsidies expired. Hiring slowed, and high prices weighed heavily on low-income earners. Black households were the only racial group last year in which median income fell and the poverty rate rose, according to the Census Bureau. I was hoping that the commitment to investing in America so that a broader set of Americans were actually receiving benefits in terms of low unemployment and higher wages would continue, said Diedrich Asante Muhammad, president of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, a think tank focused on issues affecting Black Americans. He said he was particularly disappointed in large businesses that said they would support Black workers in response to protests for racial justice in 2020, only to pull back. Job losses are concentrated among Black women working in professional services such as human resources, according to Ms. Wilson's analysis of federal data. A hiring freeze and mass layoffs in the federal workforce, which have continued during the government shutdown and now exceed 200,000, have also fallen disproportionately on Black workers. The hiring freeze is an impediment to young workers trying to get their foot in the door, too. The federal government is one of those places people are able to get an entry-level job, said Benga Ahilor, the chief economist at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities.
Well, two things about this. I do actually believe, well, let me put it to you this way. I think Black people in general have been kind of lulled because the government has been the sort of place for a long time where, you know, you could get a pretty decent job and a pretty decent retirement, which was one of those things even way back in the late 60s, early 70s. I did a video, or showed a video a month or so ago about how the postal service was one of those jobs that, one of the first jobs that blacks could actually get into and do well in. And the retirement was pretty good. As a matter of fact, when I was growing up, my across the street neighbor's father was some sort of postal manager. He wasn't a mail carrier. He was up in some sort of management position, and he wound up retiring. I don't know how long Mr. Williams worked there, but it was like 30, 40 years. However, my wife's aunt retired from the postal service, so it wasn't just black people. She was out in Utah in the Salt Lake City area, so it wasn't just blacks. It's just, I guess it was disproportionate in some way. But this is kind of a wake-up call, to be honest. I had a discussion earlier today with tropes about how America is basically inherently just systemically racist, and there is not a job. Government. The government of the United States is the government of the United States. I'll just leave it there. And you'll never convince me that Trump and his Project 2025 crew did not know this. They pretty much knew that this would disproportionately affect black women and the black community in particular. So, this is one of these things where you kill 2 or 3 birds with one stone. You get to carry out a racist agenda, and it's hidden behind cost cutting, something legitimate. We want a smaller government, therefore we're going to reduce the size of government, and it's just a bonus. It's a bug. It's a feature, not a bug sort of result. And this is what I meant when I showed that video earlier. Was it a video, or maybe I just talked about it, about this particular American culture being intrinsically racist. White supremacy basically hides itself behind legitimate purposes. Tropes made the point that, white people get hurt by it too. Well, that is true, but white people being hurt by white supremacy, the cultural white supremacy, the systemic racism, they're just kind of collateral damage. And they might be in an economic class where they're kind of, susceptible to it. White supremacy is willing to take, a little bit of a hit, on its own white people, as long as they're not rich or elite white people. Some working poor, or some, somebody in Podunk, Oklahoma, who gets kind of, in the way, they're not going to care too much about that. So I know there are many people who disagree with me, but I can support it, with the literature. And this is just one of those examples where, it's a twofer. Same thing with voting rights, the Voting Rights Act. It is literally, on the surface, you don't want race to determine how you do gerrymandering. But in a place like Alabama or Mississippi or somewhere like that, well, you know what? You get a twofer. You literally get to say, hey, we don't want to use race. We're following the letter of the law. And you get to hurt non-white people, in this case, black people. You get a twofer. And that's how white supremacy works. And Dave, I have no idea what anti-socialism is. Is that a term? It's one that I'm not familiar with, and I don't care. You and who am I thinking of? You and all your little buddies can. Oh, you and Hood Servative can go along with that. Columbus was the original Steve Jobs. Well, Steve Jobs was a monster too. If you dig into his reputation, but you and Hood Servative and the Gulag or Goulash or whatever you call yourselves, you can go ahead and buy into that that theory that Columbus wasn't a problem, and basically Hood Servative thinks that black women are the worst problem in America. Maybe for him, but no other normal people really have his affliction. And blacks are hardly socialist. If they are, it's more by, more like a communitarian thing, like officially socialist, like card carrying, DSA members. That's untrue, and the numbers won't bear you out, Deacon Dave. Okay, so we're pretty much done with that New York Times article, and Stacey Patton, Dr. Stacey Patton, had comments about that article. She says the New York Times can't admit that rising black employment is a racial purge disguised as economics, and that's kind of what I'm saying. You can basically legitimize or rationalize the purge as economics, but like I said, it's a twofer, and it's one of these things like colorblind law. Okay, and I think it was Chief Justice Roberts has literally said, if on the face of it race isn't involved, then you know what, the results are kind of like an act of God. If it happens to impact black women more so, hey, that's just kind of how it is. The reason we're doing it is economics. And if it's more impactful on the black community, then hey, you know what? That's kind of an act of God. We can't help that. And the answer is sure you could, but it's not upholding the racial contract if you actually are proactive. So let's see, this is a longish article. Let's see here. I should have marked this out, but I didn't pre-read it. Let's start here. She says right here, for decades, black employment has functioned as a political thermostat. I think a canary in the coal mine would be better. The higher our joblessness, the colder the moral climate of America. And major outlets like the Times, New York Times, track the temperature not to expose injustice, but to measure how efficiently white supremacy is working. Each surge in black unemployment is presented as a troubling anomaly rather than proof that the system is beautifully performing exactly as designed. And I'm afraid I agree with that. If blacks, I can't prove this, but I guarantee you, well, I can't prove it, so I can't guarantee, but had this been a bunch of white women, I have my doubts whether this purge would have happened this way. I can't prove it, but I kind of have that feeling. Mainly because white men would have to deal with the misses when they get home. So she says, notice how the article's language erases the architects. The economy slows, conditions deteriorate, hiring freezes. No one is doing these things. They simply happen. That's colorblind law. The results don't matter as long as the face of the law is race neutral. But behind every freeze is a signature. Behind every cut is a hand. Behind every policy shift is an ideology that views Black labor as disposable and Black progress as a threat. And I hate to be all conspiracy theory here, but I guarantee you, having excess labor, I seem to recall it was the Secretary of the Interior saying, she was asked, well, who, and it was the Secretary of the Interior, by the way, not, I happened to watch this press conference a few months ago, and the question was asked, well, you know, if we're getting rid of all the immigrant labor, who's going to fill in for them? And she literally said it would be people who were on the welfare rolls, who, you know, maybe, you know, receiving some sort of social safety net benefit. I'm just curious to know whether all this excess labor is going to wind up out there picking peaches. But that's kind of conspiracy theory. Off the top of my head, I have nothing solid to back up that suspicion. She says further down, Black unemployment is rising because that's what this administration wants. The destruction of DEI, the layoffs, the economic exclusion, all of it serves a single political narrative. White prosperity requires Black precarity. That's an interesting point. Interesting. She says when the nation's paper of record refuses to name it, it becomes complicit. The Times can calculate the numbers, quote the experts, and frame the photographs, but it can't bring itself to write the one sentence that would make it honest. This is not the market correcting itself. This is white power reclaiming its economy. And I'm afraid, I'm sure there will be a lot of people of the hood conservative ilk who will basically go, this is what Black people get for working for the government. And he might be right. He as a white supremacist probably understands it better than most. Let's see. The agenda of raising the Black political IQ was a failure and a huge fail and an epic fail. No idea. Once again, Deacon Dave, you speak of stuff I have no clue what you're talking about. What effort to raise Black political IQ was a failure? Can you be more specific? I would not put it above a Donald Trump basically punishing the Black community for not voting for him. You know, Black women were basically 90+% voting against him. I have no doubt somewhere deep in the recesses, somewhere buried deep, there's basically like, hey, you know what? If Black women didn't vote for me, this is what they get. I can't prove it. I just have a sneaking intuition or sneaking suspicion. So, speaking of Black women, I have to do this. This just wandered into my algorithm, and I'm gonna run this through and then talk a little bit about this channel that I discovered totally by accident. Sometimes YouTube can be a treasure trove of weirdness. And if anyone wants to come up and talk about what I just talked about, feel free to do it, but don't think you're going to come up here and blather on about nothing in particular. What I'll need you to do is address my point directly.
I lost the freaking connection. Oh no! Let's see if this is Isn't that strange? The day that I say I'm gonna go live, I keep losing the connection for some reason. I don't know why. So anyways, I was rudely interrupted. So I'm gonna make my tea. This is my tea kettle. This design is by Michael Graves, and it's my favorite. I've had it for a very long time. I actually got it from Target years ago, and they don't sell them anymore, so I try to preserve it to the best of my ability. Wait for it. I'm gonna go ahead and put some water in here and watch what happens. It's so flipping cute. Okay, so. Okay, yes, I know. I make tea with Fiji water. I don't use sink water, so. Here we go. Get it going, get it going. Woo, woo. Woo-hoo. Tea time, baby. It's tea time. All right, anyways. So, that was it. I just made the whole bottle. Probably gonna drink it all. And now, we're just gonna wait for my apple turnover to be completed. And it's gonna take like 25 minutes, so I'll probably have to come back online. Wait, I want you to hear the tea kettle though before you guys go. It's so cute. I just love it, you know? Look at all me. It's just a way. Tea over there. I know. Oh, you guys are funny. Hey, Wilton. Isn't this cute? This is actually a full jumper, and I just added a little jacket on top that I had earlier. You can pair it if you're going out, and I can put on a pair. Well, right now I have slippers on, but normally I'd put maybe a pair of boots on or a wedge and head out the door to go somewhere, maybe to the movies, whatever. I think it's so cute. You know, casual, cute casual. Let's see. We're gonna wait till this thing heats. Can you guys see me? I mean, the connection is so bad, and I don't really know why. Maybe I should take the Wi-Fi off, or maybe it's because every time I move away, it says poor connection. That could be. Let me try that again. I'm just curious at this point. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I don't know what the poor connection's about. Anyways, I have my favorite cup. You can do it, because you can do anything you want in your life. So that's what I'm gonna have my tea in tonight. So it's going, and I'm gonna put my apple turnover in the oven shortly. It's warming up now, so.
I actually suspect I know why this video is being made.
Bugsby by myself, baby. What you mean? What you mean? Oh. Hey, Ryan. Rabuta? What's that mean? Oh, Friends Wild Dealer. Oh, apple turnovers. They're so amazing. Oh, so good. Hey, church from Peru. He put Peru. Put a little zing to it, why don't you? That's right. Hey, Tiny. Hey, Randy, what's going on? What's going on in the kitchen?
You have questions, SKC?
You're a hot butter yellow. I know. I need a tan. Ah, I should put my glasses on, right? My hair is looking like a little teacher right now. Ah, my goodness. Hey from DMV. Woo woo.
I'm going to jump ahead a little bit.
Kettle is going off. It's gonna start going. I'm gonna let it soak all the delicious flavors of ginger and turmeric, and I might even just put a little lime in there. Give it a little zing. Now my apple turnover is gonna take like 20 to 25 minutes approximately, give or take. So I'm gonna have to come back live because my percentage on my phone is going to die.
Now, this particular channel is called BAWH, and I can only assume it means big ass and wide hips or something like that. And the reason I bring this up is I had no clue who this woman was, but just a little bit of digging around comes up with plus size models. So this particular video is called From One Runway to Social Media, The Rise of Ingrid Smith. And apparently she was some form of plus size model, body positivity, something or another. So I'll play this video if I can.
Via Queens, your number one channel on YouTube. You also celebrate beautiful cover models. The beautiful
So
models.
apparently, I don't know what she was modeling or who she was modeling for, but apparently this is a thing out there on the internet, and I'm just catching up to it. And this is why it's dedicated to the Gulag. I know at some point I've heard one or many of them talking about Black women in particular and plus size.
In today's video, we're diving into the biography and lifestyle.
And I'm sure this music will get me in trouble here somehow or another. But apparently this is a thing out there on the internet. Who knew? And now we all do, or at least I do. Now this is a little much, but I figured I would. You're not a fan. Well, I didn't think you would be a fan, Deacon Dave, but I figured I would at least thrill you. There are some men out there who are fans of this, so it was something that just. I don't know why these things wander into my algorithm, but I think somehow or another I might actually be better for it. Not exactly sure how, but in some way. So that's it. I just found it fairly fascinating. Let's have a look at this.
I love this dress. So cute, beautiful sweater dress. Paired it with my 9 West heels. That's right. See you later. I love this dress. So cute, beautiful sweater dress. Paired it with my 9 West heels. That's right. See you later.
Oh, is that what it is, Slick? I'm not that single.
Beautiful sweater dress. Paired it with my 9 West heels. That's right. See you later.
Now, I always wonder, and it's not just this particular woman, but women in general. I think instead of making tea and doing, I want to say fast food, like if you're gonna do apple turnovers and be of this body type, at least make homemade apple turnovers instead of getting them out of a box. and don't make videos about it. I don't know. I don't know that this is a thirsty sector. This is a little bit too much of a good thing, in my opinion. But it fascinated me, like I said, because I think she's got a really pretty face, and she's older. But this is not something. I know she's single. I'll just put it that way. That would be the only reason she'd be doing this. So I figured I would share this with all you folks. No, not ready to mingle. That's a little too much mingling for me. Too much to mingle with. I'll put it that way. So anyway, we'll get back to the serious stuff here. And I think there are plenty of men who would find her attractive. But I just tend to think, if the first thing you put on before you put on your dress is shapewear, then, that probably means she should be putting forth effort in another direction. What's up, Lupin? More of a crab boil type of girl? Well, I will tell you this. The other thing that struck me, I actually do know a woman who looks a lot like this woman does. She's really good looking, at least when she's younger. She's in her mid 60s now, and she's the wife of my old fishing buddy. As a matter of fact, I saw her the last time I was in Savannah. She, her husband, me, and my son went out to dinner. But yeah, she is a boxed apple turnover gal. And I'm just saying, at least make them yourself. If you must have them, you'll burn some calories making them from scratch. Let's see. SKC, at least thank you for Dr. Harrelson. Interesting guy. Reminds me a bit. No, he does not. The accent is like Shelby Foote, but I wonder at that connection. He talks about Shelby Foote a lot, but if Shelby Foote wasn't actually a historian, by the way. He just knew a lot about the topic, and he was a writer. As a matter of fact, Shelby Foote probably got more famous from doing that Civil War documentary than he was before. Take it easy, SKC. So let's see, what else do we have here? Black men don't cheat, Slick Rick. Is that right? Deacon never stopped my ex. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, congratulations, SKC. I didn't realize that your newest child was born. So congratulations. Let's see, what else do we have here? Yeah, it is unfortunate. Though I know women who actually enjoy cooking, but it is less and less. I've noticed. So anyway, the main attraction, at least for now, one of my favorite female historians, she wrote a book. I actually have the book, and I guess I need to get back to it. I stopped about a quarter of the way through. Ooh, my screen is drifting here. Jill Lepore. She specializes in American history. Great writer. And anyway, this is some author event from a few days ago that I've been itching to watch and didn't get a chance to watch it this morning.
This is one of the most talked about.
Back to history, folks.
Yeah, who's excited for this event? Who's excited? This is one of the most talked about books of the fall, and we are thrilled to have her here. We have an extraordinary fall season lined up, complete with artists and novelists and historians and politicians. Last week, we hosted Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. And later this season, we're hosting Congressman Jim Clyburn. We sincerely hope that you will join us for more events. But tickets are selling fast. They really are selling very fast. So please do register, which you can do through our webpage, freelibraryfoundation.org. I want to say just a few quick words about our organization in general. The foundation works together with the Free Library to support programming and advance its mission of promoting literacy throughout the Philadelphia region. As a nonprofit, of course, we are reliant upon your support to achieve these goals, so please do consider donating, which you can also do through our website. Again, that's freelibraryfoundation.org. Before we get to tonight's program, there are a few people and organizations I would like to thank. I'd like to thank Uncle Bobby's, our partner bookseller, and the Philadelphia Citizen, our media partner. And finally, I would like to thank the volunteers, a dedicated group of library patrons whose loyalty to this program is unmatched. You would have seen them as you came in the auditorium this evening. We are so grateful for their support. And now I'm going to turn things over to Toby Dichter, a member of the Foundation's Board of Directors and a tireless supporter of the Free Library and the Author Series. Toby generously endowed this lecture in honor of her mother, Melia Gordon. Without her support, tonight's program and much else would not be possible. Thank you all again for being here. Please join me in welcoming Toby Dichter. Toby.
How about that? So what's the secret sauce of Jill Lepore? How does this professor of both law and history, staff writer for The New Yorker for 20 years, author of countless books and prizes, wife, mother, cheerful commentator, pull us all together in thinking about the past? I think her genius lies in three things. One, her genuine enthusiasm for the subject. She calls history the great time machine. Two, her sense of fairness, or as she calls it, the asymmetry of history, the imbalance when the story is told by those with power. She ferrets out the backstory of the forgotten characters, as she did in the life and opinions of Jane Franklin, and in the defeated Native American tribes in King Philip's War, and about in the 1741 slave rebellion in New York burning. The third is that she's a storyteller and knows how to grab the piece that will make the past come alive for us, as she does in this book with Justice Scalia, or in The History of Feminism as in The Secret History of Wonder Woman, which she introduced on this very stage in 2014, and even previous to that, her earlier books. She thinks this is the third or fourth time she's been here. So do you want to know the history of this Wonder Woman? Jill Lepore was the first in her family to go to college. A teenager who had no interest in college, but went after receiving an ROTC scholarship to Tufts University. Tufts University. You went there? I think Joe Neubauer went there. A teenager who had no interest in college, and she began as a math major. After a year, she dropped both ROTC and math and switched to English, finishing her degree at Tufts in 3 years, while working as a secretary at Harvard, where she sneaked in to audit history classes. Can you believe it? After earning her PhD from Yale, she held professorships at the University of California, San Diego, and Boston University before returning to Harvard to lead the department that she had sneaked in to audit. It's so poignant. Most relevant tonight is her founding and leading the Amendment Project that gave rise to this book. I love what Daniel posted on our website about it. At a time when the Constitution's vulnerability is all too evident and the risk of political violence is all too real, we the people, with its shimmering prose and pioneering research, hints at the prospects of a better constitutional future as amended America. You should get this book, even if you've read the cover story in The Atlantic, or read the New York Times, or watched last week's PBS Evening News or CNN, because, to quote Lepore about her style of narrative nonfiction, she won't give you the argument on the first page, but will convince you that you need to read the whole book to find out what happened. So let's find out. and welcome the remarkable Jill Lepore in conversation with Kate Shaw, another force of nature, professor of law at the University of Pennsylvania Carey Law School, and I think some of her students are here, co-host of the Supreme Court podcast called Strict Scrutiny, and a contributing opinion writer with the New York Times. We are in for a treat. Please welcome Professors Kate Shaw and Jill Lepore.
Well, good evening, Philadelphia. What a pleasure it is to be here tonight in the place the Constitution first emerged to discuss this wonderful new book, We the People, by historian Jill Lepore. So, Jill, I want to start by asking you to read from the beginning of the book.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Good evening. It's such a treat to be here, even on this rainy day. Happy almost 250th anniversary of the Pennsylvania Constitution. Just getting you guys warmed up. Okay. Thank you so much, Kate. We, the people. The Constitution of the United States is made of things that are born, live, thrive, decay, and die. Insects, animals, plants, ideas. In order to form a more perfect union. Each of its elements began long ago in the loamy earth, hatching and creeping or slipping, slick and squealing from the womb of the mind. Establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility. The text is written on parchment, made from sheep, fleeced, their hides soaked in lime, stretched and dried. Provide for the common defense. The ink came from the buds of oak leaves, swollen to the size of musket balls by the eggs of wasps. Promote the general welfare. Its words were shaped by quills fashioned from the feathers of molting geese. Secure the blessings of liberty. Its lofty, momentous ideas came from the minds of men long since dead and from the books they read. To ourselves and our posterity. Of the nearly 200 written constitutions, the Constitution of the United States, the most influential constitution in the world, is also among the oldest, a relic, as brittle as bone, as hard as stone. Do ordain and establish.
Yeah. So, as that opening just so beautifully distills, the book develops an argument that the Constitution is an organic being, that the documented, drafted in 1787, right here, was really just a start, and that it was intended to be subject to regular amendment, but that at various periods in our history, including in this moment, we have strayed from that essential truth. And if amendment is central to the Constitution, the degree to which the prospect of amendment feels out of reach today throws into question the entire constitutional project. So the book has tons in it. I want to cover as much as we can in the limited time we have tonight. So I'll ask a handful of questions and then we'll have an opportunity for audience questions as well. So maybe let's start with mechanics. So Article 5 sets forth the process or processes for amending the Constitution. So can you talk a little bit about what is in Article 5, what we know about why Article 5 was included and shaped the way it was in the Constitution, and in general terms, how we have used Article 5. We'll obviously go deeper on some specifics, but just to start, give us a picture.
Yeah, sure. So Article 5 is the amendment provision of the U.S. Constitution. It works, it's meant to work, allowing for a couple of different methods for proposing amendments to the Constitution, and then methods for ratifying the U.S. Constitution. And the methods that have been used chiefly involve Congress proposing amendments that then have to pass a supermajority in both houses of Congress, after which the proposed amendment goes to the states for ratification, and 3/4 of the states need to ratify an amendment for it to become part of the Constitution. There are other methods. The states can petition Congress to propose amendments, and if then they pass Congress, they go back to the states for ratification. The states can call for a constitutional convention to propose and deliberate over amendments, and which then still need to be ratified. None of those other methods have never actually succeeded.
So, in terms of what we've actually done, supermajorities in each House of Congress, supermajorities in the states. And, you know, this is something I'm sort of fixated on. The Constitution has a few places where it imposes these very high bars. So, convicting on impeachment, right, requires a conviction of 2/3 in the Senate. The 25th Amendment, the part of it that allows the vice president and the cabinet to oust a president who is unable to perform the office. But if the president objects, then 2/3 of each House of Congress has to override the president's effort to hold on. Thinking about presidency a lot recently, but it's a handful of places and important ones where the choice is made, sometimes in the original document and sometimes in amendments, to require significantly more than a simple majority vote. So I guess I'm curious as to Article 5 in particular. Why make it so difficult to amend the written Constitution? And how do we understand those supermajority requirements today? And maybe I'll sort of pair that with another question, because you mentioned the state constitution, right? So the US Constitution is the subject of the book, but obviously every state also has its own constitution. Many of them predate the United States Constitution. They loomed, some of them, very large in decisions made about what to do with the United States Constitution. And they're all a heck of a lot easier to amend than the federal Constitution. So I guess maybe talking about that question of difficulty in Article 5 in the context of, other kind of paths not taken in terms of state constitutions, how should we think about those requirements today?
Yeah, I think we really should not think about the U.S. Constitution without the context of the state constitutions, in that I think in law schools in particular, which is mainly where people talk about the Constitution, I think those things are quite distinct, right? When people are talking about constitutional law, they're largely talking about the U.S. Constitution. But the U.S. Constitution is a product of state constitutionalism. So in 1776, before Jefferson drafted the Declaration of Independence in June and July of that year, the states were already writing their constitutions. Because if you think about it, the war starts in 1775. Once the war starts, the royal governors start fleeing, going back to England. The colonial assemblies collapse because they were appointed by the royal governor. A lot of the colonial assemblies, those people were loyalists. They too are turning tail and leaving for England. There's no government in the colonies anymore. And so by January of 1776, the Continental Congress starts saying, okay, hey, states, turns out you probably need a government if we're going to act in concert to continue the war. Like, you can't even muster troops and your state's being invaded. So the states start writing constitutions in January of 1776. And John Adams gets very upset because he's like, these things need to happen in order. Every state needs to write a constitution. Then we need to declare independence. Then we need to write a constitution for the new nation. And the rest of the Continental Congress is like, dude, we're at war. Like, you might like to do things in that order, but that's not how they're going to happen. So it's just kind of this chaos of Pennsylvania writes its first constitution that spring. But the states, even though they are in the midst of war, people are fighting this war because they believe in self-government. And they haven't had it. So they have to invent it. And the way they're inventing it is in each of their constitutions as a different experiment. It's like a science experiment, right? We're going to run, we're going to put blue dye in this petri dish and green dye in this petri dish, and this will be our control group, and this one will, And so every state has, Pennsylvania's first constitution, you guys probably know this, I think there's no governor. The laws have to be posted in every pub in the state for a year before anyone can vote on. Like, there's a lot of drinking going on in Pennsylvania, I think. But each state has a different way of doing things because they're just trying to figure it out. In some states you elect the judges, in some states they get appointed by the governor. Pennsylvania is a unicameral. There's only one branch of the legislature. So briefly. At the beginning, and then that gets immediately overruled. Pennsylvania has the most democratic constitution, and it's the one that the framers of the U.S. Constitution most want to leave behind. So there are all these different experiments, and one thing that's not working are the Articles of Confederation. I feel very silly talking to you. You're this esteemed constitutional lawyer, and so you're correct me when I get there. So the Articles of Confederation, which are the only thing holding the Union together for the sake of fighting the war, require unanimity to amend. All 13 states have to agree. And yet the articles are quite weak because they were just sort of thrown together. They don't grant Congress the power to tax, to resolve debts, to resolve disputes between the states. So Congress is sort of useless, which might seem very familiar. But then someone thought maybe we ought to do something about that. And so in 1786, they decide to hold a convention to revise the Articles of Confederation. And sadly, no one shows up. This is going to be in Annapolis, so the few people who do show up say, no, let's meet in Philadelphia. We'll meet in Philadelphia the next year, and we're done with revising these useless Articles of Confederation. We're going to write a whole new Constitution. So everybody understood from the beginning that the Constitution was going to have a good, usable, useful amendment mechanism, because the reason they were meeting was because the Articles of Confederation had a useless one. And the states by now have not all of them, but most of them have written amendment provisions into their state constitutions. So in a way, when they meet in Philadelphia, they come here in May, early May, and writing Article 5, there's a reason it's Article 5. It's like kind of one of the last things they do because everything else is harder. And they're like, okay, we all agree about this one. We know we need to have an amendment provision. It's got to be not requiring unanimity. It shouldn't also be super easy. I mean, we don't want to make it like a basic majority vote or something. But the distance in between those two, how they get to 2/3, that's actually about other compromises that they've already made. But it's sort of like the no-brainer part of the Constitution in some way. And it's also, when are we now? September 24th? It's still pretty warm down here. They were so hot.
The windows are all closed,
They
right, to
nailed
keep
the
they're
windows
secret.
shut.
They're so hot. It smells
They're
terrible.
so hot. They have woolen underwear on. They've spent the whole summer in Philadelphia, not going to the beach. There's no air conditioning. They have the windows now. They just want to go home. So like they kind of just throw it together.
And here we are. Okay, so we talked, one of the many things the book does that's amazing, I think, is to remind us how central state constitutions are to the entirety of the United States Constitution. And another thing it does is really self-consciously expand the historical record when we study the Constitution, and in particular, of course, the topic of amendment, which is the topic of the book. So there have been, as the book shows, efforts from the beginning to amend the Constitution. And some of those efforts have created the sorts of historical records that are easy to access. But many, many more efforts to amend the Constitution that this book surfaces for the first time don't even result in a document introduced in Congress. Like, you find them elsewhere. And so before the writing of the book, right, came this enormous project of amassing thousands, right, of new documents as part of this amendments project. So Jill, can you just talk a little bit about what the amendments project is? And then maybe we could talk a little bit about how some of what you learned through that project expands the way we should understand both the successes and the failures of amendment.
Yeah, so as was mentioned in that lovely introduction, a lot of my work really is about the asymmetry of the historical record, that we know so much about some people and so little about other people. And just strikingly, nowhere is that more true than in the historical record as it is construed by the U.S. Supreme Court. For the court, the historical record, which the court is fascinated by the 18th century, but its understanding of the historical record is just an incredibly shrunken, bounded thing. I mean, they're beautiful documents, the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, Madison's notes on the Constitutional Convention, the notes of the ratifying convention. They're hugely important, of soaring importance, and they're fascinating and of course apt in every way. But from the vantage of a historian who works with the large sweep of American history and the experience of many different kinds of people and individuals and groups, they're just like a vanishingly small oddity, you know? So when I've thought a lot about how strange that is and how unlike historical reasoning and standards of historical evidence that the court's current way of thinking about the historical record is. I really sort of like, well, what about what everybody else wanted? And especially people that couldn't even vote for people to go to ratifying conventions in the States, say. Because there actually has been a lot of historical scholarship about what sometimes historians call the people out of doors. They were called even at the time the people out of doors. Like people who would gather around Carpenter's Hall, like who would just be, they're in there writing our new government, like people would just go out and hang out and be difficult around the building. And a lot of people would send in letters and protests and to their ratifying conventions or send in petitions of complaint or propose formal amendments in the states. And there is just a quite lively, unruly, just font of agitation, of constitutional agitation, both in the moment, beginning in 1776 when the states are writing, like 3,000 people gather in Philadelphia to say, isn't it great, we're going to have a constitutional convention to write a state constitution. Like, it's this huge celebration. Everyone gets drunk again. There's a lot of drinking and a lot of arguing about how the government should work. And I just kind of puzzled as a citizen by why that history is not part of how we decide what the meaning of the Constitution is. And I think, someone who has that judicial philosophy could defend it, but they can't defend it as history. So I started this project partly because I really wanted a new body of evidence to work within my students in teaching. It turned out when I would ask students who were like, I want to do some research on efforts to insert the word God into the U.S. Constitution, and it would be almost impossible to do. There was no central place to go look to see who has ever tried to do that, when and why, and what happened to those efforts. So I got this wonderfully generous grant from the erstwhile National Endowment for the Humanities, to work with undergraduates for, I think it was like a 5-year project to collect and digitize and tag by topic every meaningful attempt to amend the U.S. Constitution, including petitions submitted to Congress, letters, social media posts, sort of, anything that we could find. And it was really illuminating, but it even the way we defined what a possible, like a meaningfully proposed amendment was, even that bar was kind of too high for me, because I felt that it was impossible to really put in. So for instance, you may know that right after Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, it was published and printed and people celebrated all over the United States and read it out loud and, shot darts at pictures of the king, and like it was really fun, and they drank a lot. But there was, for instance, this black minister in Connecticut, Lemuel Haynes, wrote a response called Liberty Further Extended, which is an extended reflection on the Declaration of Independence and its failure to end slavery and the intellectual and moral inconsistency of the document. In my mind, it is essentially, that tract is essentially a proposed amendment to the Declaration of Independence, which has become constitutionalized. And yet, it's not like anyone in the Supreme Court's ever going to cite Liberty Further Extended. And yet, nor is it even in the Amendments Project, because it doesn't sort of meet my bar. It's before the Constitution. It's not addressed to a specific state constitution either. But I think that if we want a richer, fuller, more democratic constitutionalism in the present, we actually need to have it in the past. And I don't think we actually have had that, because so much of the story that we tell ourselves as a nation about the Constitution is essentially the story of a series of Supreme Court decisions.
And that is definitely an impoverished and inaccurate way to understand the Constitution, is just by reading Supreme Court opinions. But I am going to ask about a couple, if that's okay. And you did mention the Supreme Court, and I think this does tie to the Amendments Project. So I thought I would ask about the 14th Amendment, which is ratified in 1868. It is the middle of the 3 amendments that are added in the 5 years between 1865 and 1870. So the 13th Amendment ends slavery. The 14th has a bunch of components, which we'll talk about. And the 15th, prohibits racial discrimination in voting. So the 14th has been at the center of a number of Supreme Court cases, both recently and upcoming. So in just last year, right, in Trump versus Anderson, right, the Supreme Court, that case involves the third section of the 14th Amendment, which disqualifies office holders who have engaged in insurrection from, again, holding office. And the Supreme Court held that the state of Colorado couldn't keep then candidate Trump off of the presidential ballot under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment.
Hey, Lupin, are you still out in the audience? Funny you should mention Code Noir. Let's see here. Damn it, you're not there. It's funny you should mention, funny Lupin should mention Code Noir. I just bought a book by Tyler Stovall. I'm going to be able to actually talk about this book. I haven't read it yet, but I kind of know what it's about. So that's a good idea.
That's 2024. In 2023, the Supreme Court held that the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment prohibited universities from considering race in higher education admissions. I think the court encountered but did not reach the merits of the constitutionality of the day one executive order purporting to end birthright citizenship. But I think in the next year or so, the court is likely to have to answer the question of whether the Constitution permits the president through executive order to end birthright citizenship. So that is just, like a sampling of things this Supreme Court has done in recent years, or I think will soon do. And so, Jill, you write that, and again, this ties back to the Amendments Project, that the roots of the 14th Amendment lie not in the halls of Congress, but meetings in cities and states, state constitutional conventions, so-called colored conventions. So can you just say a few words about what is that fuller picture of the origins of this incredibly important, maybe the most important constitutional amendment, the 14th Amendment? And, it would probably take too long to go deep on all of this, but I guess what would a fuller, better understanding of the 14th Amendment mean in cases like the ones I just mentioned, or in general when it comes to the Supreme Court's interpretation of the 14th Amendment?
Yeah, the 14th Amendment is so important. It's like a whole new constitution. And it was really thought about that way at the time. There were writers who said, after the ratification of the 14th Amendment, well, we'll stop celebrating 1776 as a country because we should just celebrate 1868. Like, this is actually the founding of the country. Like, it was an incomplete founding in 1776 or 1787, but this is our second founding, our new founding. And I think a lot of historians, in fact, legal scholars, also think about the 39th Congress that drafted the 14th Amendment in 1865 as essentially a constitutional convention. So there's a really kind of almost like when you renew your wedding vows somehow, but you've been married for long enough that it's a really deeper, different kind of experience. And the people who are there with you to celebrate it are richer, deeper friends that you've had for many seasons of your life. There's a kind of that feel to the 14th Amendment. It's just like a transcendent
But you're
thing.
also divorcing the original Constitution in a really profound way. So we have to complicate it a little bit.
It actually raises an interesting question. This is a diversion, but I promise I'm going to get back to the origin of the 14th Amendment. When the first amendments were proposed, which became our Bill of Rights, there was a big debate in Congress about what to do with them, because a lot of people thought you should go back in and edit the Constitution and like scratch out the things that the Bill of Rights negate. And other people are like, no, that'll be so messy. We should just put them at the end and we'll just call it something else. Like this will be like the list of the amendments. And so they also thought, we'll call it the Bill of Rights and then people will shut up about it or something. But there was a huge debate, and it really would have been very different if you think about it. There also was like a printing cost problem. People are like, we already printed so many copies of this thing. Now we have to go, and then people are going to have two different versions. But then the lawyerly people who were not so worried about costs were like, yeah, but as a lawyer, what if I have like Article 3 is contradicted by Amendment 4, how do I, it's going to lead to all kinds of problems of interpretation in the future, which was true. But if the 14th Amendment, if the decision had been to edit the original Constitution, then release a revised version, the 14th Amendment would have overwritten quite a bit of it. But the debate about where the 14th Amendment comes from and what it means based on what it meant at the time is like probably the biggest constitutional matter of disputation in the last 100 years, certainly since Brown v. Board of Education, where the debate in Brown v. Board of Education, when it was argued and re-argued, was like, what did they mean by the 14th Amendment? You, the NAACP, are saying the 14th Amendment was intended to prohibit segregation, but you, all of the segregated schools, are saying it was intended to prohibit no such thing. Who has the better historical evidence? And that's why it was re-argued. And then Earl Warren says, your historical evidence is completely inconclusive. Here's the thing, it's wrong. Segregation is just wrong, and we're going to end it. That was a different moment in judicial history. But in any rate, that was a really important moment because it was like the history, Warren saying, it's not that the history doesn't matter, but like we can't find answers in the past or we'll be trapped, we'll be shackled to the past. So my point though, my analysis of the 14th Amendment is even then, when they had assigned all these people, please go all over the country, scour the evidence, find out what they meant, no one looked at the records of the Black conventions, which were constitutional conventions held by Black men, more than 200 of them across the free states, starting in 1828, 1829, in which Black men got together. They had state conventions, they had national conventions, they had regional conventions. They gave speeches, they raised toasts. I'm sure some of them drank, many of them drank. They published their proceedings, and they argued about the Constitution. And those are just, they have no place in our history of the Constitution. Like, bizarrely, like there's some fantastic research on these. There's a great website called the Colored Conventions Project that has collected a transcription of all the proceedings and has quite a bit of details about it. It's not like these sources are not available to the courts or even, to law schools where we're teaching constitutional history. It's just that the speeches and writings and gatherings and conventions of Black Americans were not constitutionalized. I would argue they were constitutionalized. That is what the 14th Amendment is, right? Like that, those are the origins of the 14th Amendment. And is it a big secret? It's not. They're printed. Like you can read about them in any newspaper of the day. So if we can't see that, then the 14th Amendment just is far more mysterious than it is required to be.
So there's so much more I want to ask you on that, but I want to make sure to cover a bit more of what is in the book. So after the Reconstruction amendments, you have a long period of no amendments to the Constitution. And then you have this surge between 1913 and 1920. So you have the income tax amendment, you have direct election of senators, right? Originally, it was just state legislatures that pick senators. Not until the 17th Amendment do senators get directly elected. Prohibition, the 19th Amendment, right, guaranteeing the right to vote for women. So there's that kind of flurry of activity. And then there is another break, although not nearly as long as the break that precedes that kind of cluster of amendments. But actually, after that 1920 passes, you have, and this is again, I'm sorry, I'm coming back to the United States Supreme Court because it really is such an important player and often villain in the story that you are telling. So the effort to do a child labor amendment, which if you're like, wait, which amendment is that? No, so that one never makes it, but it comes really close. And I guess maybe, do you want to talk about what the impetus is to amend the Constitution, right, to prohibit child labor or to make clear that Congress can do so, and sort of what the failure tells us, and that
Hey, Lupin, I don't know if you heard me a few minutes ago. I actually just bought a book by Tyler Stovall. He's a scholar. You may have heard of him. He did like a lot of historical work on the Code Noir. Apparently it goes back to like the 1600s. It's, Louisiana had a code noir, but apparently it has a history way before Louisiana. So yeah, I'll definitely deal with it because I've got that book, and then I've got a bunch of other stuff that I just found online. So yeah, we'll maybe this Saturday would be a good time to talk about it. So thank you for that. I would have never thought of it otherwise.
I think maybe will bring us up to kind of FDR and the New Deal, which is, of course, a really important part of the story you tell.
Yeah. So if you think about that set of 4 amendments that are ratified between 1913 and 1920, they're all ones that people had been fighting for decades. It takes decades and decades and decades to get any of them through, but they're all in different ways an attempt to address the problems of the industrial economy and the political powerlessness of the poor and of women and children. And they're all attempts to remedy that. So, right, the income tax amendment is just about the poor, just getting rid of tariffs and taxing income in a graduated way so that the plutocrats will have to pay to support what is becoming, some social welfare provisions. The direct election of the Senate, right, just try to enfranchise people to have more of a control of their own lives. The prohibition, however bad an idea it was really a feminist agenda, which was a way to stop
husbands from beating up
the
wives.
Abuse of women and children by men who could not work because they drank all day. It really was an attempt to protect women and
I'll
children.
remind you of someone, folks, and it's not
from
me.
Domestic violence, which was really and remains very associated with alcoholism. So it was a women's campaign, and it was a feminist campaign. And the granting women the right to vote, the argument always had to be made, this will be good because women will be able to protect children. And so the whole package really is about the weak and the poor, the politically weak and the economically poor. And child labor was the natural next amendment in that sequence, also because, like the 16th Amendment, the income tax amendment, it was the only way to address the Supreme Court decision in this case too. So the Supreme Court had ruled in the 1890s that an income tax was unconstitutional. So the only way to affect it, even though Congress had already passed a law, was to get a constitutional amendment. Congress twice decided that the Supreme Court twice decided that Congress had no power to regulate or to tax prohibitively child labor. So the only way to end it was with a constitutional amendment. And it had huge public support, really widespread public support. It passed the House on the day it was introduced. There had been child labor laws and constitutional amendments in many, many states. But the advocates for the child labor amendment did not understand, because they had not, progressivism at the time was across the parties. It wasn't a political ideology per se or a partisan position. Progressives had not encountered the kind of opposition that was waged against the child labor amendment, which was this extraordinarily well-funded campaign, chiefly led by owners of Southern textile mills who wanted to continue to be able to employ children in the mills, especially black children, and they just waged a very effective ground game. And this is also the beginnings of mass communication. So there's radio, newspapers, the advertising industry has emerged, and you can lie about stuff pretty well when you have mass communication. And so their big message was, especially to rural Americans, make sure to tell your state legislators not to vote to ratify this amendment, because if they do, you will no longer be able to tell your daughter to wash the dishes or your son to bring the hay in from the field. That your family farm would fall apart. It was an extraordinarily effective campaign, and it really caught progressives up short. It also ended the progressive era of constitutional amendment, and it also provided a model for later opponents of the progressive, like the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. The progressive amendments all had a spirit of moral reform behind them. It really seemed to suggest that moral reform and social progress could not be achieved by way of constitutional amendment if moneyed interests could be mobilized so effectively against it.
And you also sort of you
That saga
a little bit allude to
continues.
this, but there is this kind of proto Phyllis Schlafly figure, right? Mary Kilbrath.
Yes, Mary Kilbrath.
who's
I love her. She's fantastic.
I had not heard of her. Maybe I should have. But there are so many very familiar figures and storylines, and so many that are totally unfamiliar. And for me, she was one of the very unfamiliar ones.
Yeah, she's this genius conservative political operator who is dedicated. She publishes a newspaper called The Woman Patriot that is, I think the subtitle is like opposed to socialism, feminism, suffragism. Then she drops suffragism after women get the vote. And like, she's just like a one woman political movement. She's unbelievably effective. And really hardly anyone has ever written about her. She didn't leave papers anywhere. You know, there's like one senior thesis and then a brilliant dissertation, but it's kind of astonishing how someone with such political power could be so neglected. And that's sort of the other piece. Like, I'm not like resurrecting just people that I like or I agree with. I really disagree with Mary Kilbrath, but like, she's a really important American who had a lot of constitutional ideas and left behind a pretty big paper trail expressing them.
Okay, so the child labor amendment, in part because of Mary Kilbrath's efforts and in part because sort of, capital using the sort of then new forms of mass communication, is just successful in mobilizing opposition. So it passes Congress, but stalls to a halt in the states at ratification. And then so I want to now sort of move forward into FDR's presidency and the New Deal. And that's a story that I felt like I understood just in somewhat different ways after reading this account. So, people are going to be varying degrees of familiar with this standoff, right, between President Roosevelt and the very conservative Supreme Court that is striking down New Deal initiative after New Deal initiative, and also at the same time invalidating lots of state efforts to regulate in ways that protect workers and consumers and families. So this very conservative Supreme Court that is hostile to progressive legislation or action, whether state or federal. And Roosevelt responds with the court packing plan. And the way the kind of story is told is, there's a bit of a standoff, and he's unsuccessful in getting this court packing plan actually through Congress, but kind of wins at the end of the day because the Supreme Court backs down. There's the switch in time that saved 9, and the court starts upholding New Deal actions in 1937. Okay, so that part of the story is familiar, probably to varying degrees to people. But there also is, in a way, Roosevelt ends up sounding kind of like the villain of this part of the story, at least the amendment story, which is essentially by deciding not to pursue formal constitutional amendment to kind of enshrine in the document the power of the federal government to do really big, important social welfare work, he relies on the Supreme Court to uphold, to bless the ability of both the president and Congress to act. And what the Supreme Court giveth, the Supreme Court can take away. And so that is sort of the beginning of the kind of de-emphasis of formal constitutional amendment in favor of this judicialization of the most important constitutional fights and settlements that we sort of engage in. So I guess, is it right that this visionary president in many ways with respect to the Constitution, right, in his Constitutional Day speech in 1937, he famously says, the Constitution is not a lawyer's contract, it's a layman's document. He urges Americans to revere the Constitution not because it is old, but because it is ever new, but ends up thwarting inadvertently our ability to actually meaningfully make change, at least through the formal amendment process. Is that a fair kind of distillation of the book's perspective on Roosevelt?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, I have a lot of sympathy with the considerations that led him to the decision that he made. I mean, among other, so imagine it's 1935. We're still in the Depression, right? The New Deal is doing a lot of good, but we're still in a Depression. The Supreme Court starts striking down the National Recovery Act. I mean, the backbone of the New Deal has been deemed by this conservative court, the same court that had overruled child labor, essentially, is deemed unconstitutional. And his advisors say that the Gallup opinion poll starts in 1935. So that actually is kind of great polling. Frank Roosevelt's very interested in polling. And the surveys show that the public overwhelmingly supports what he's doing. And Gallup asks, like, would you support a constitutional amendment allowing for minimum wage legislation or maximum hour legislation or many of the things that Roosevelt is doing that are part of the New Deal, or federal regulation of the economy to the degree that the New Deal is doing it. And the public opinion surveys are very good. And so Roosevelt's advisors are like, let's just constitutionalize it with an amendment. Let's put through a package. Like just a few years ago, we got 4 in a few years. But Eleanor Roosevelt had been very involved in the Child Labor Act ratification battle, and therefore so had her husband. And FDR knows what kind of a force can be arrayed against constitutional amendment, and also how the Child Labor Amendment wasn't then dead. It just hadn't been ratified yet, and it had by this point been 11 years. And meanwhile, children who are 9 years old are working in mills. Like that turned out, he's like, that wasn't the right call. I'm not going to do that again. We're in the middle of a depression. It takes forever. It just takes $1 million to defeat a constitutional amendment. We have to find another way. And he knows he has this huge public support. That's not going to be enough to ratify. These people have money. It's like called the Millionaires Lobby, which was the National Manufacturers Association, which was united in its opposition to the New Deal. And so he kind of brazens it out and bullies his way through the Supreme Court, comes up with his court packing plan, and he prevails. And among the most important first things that happened is the Fair Labor Standards Act, which abolishes child labor. Once he gets that go-ahead from the court, once he wins that battle, the first thing he's doing is actually, I think it's kind of telling, right? He manages to get Congress to end child labor, and the Supreme Court doesn't overrule it. So, yes, in that sense, and there are other historians who've argued, FDR killed Article 5. I think the circumstances were pretty dire.
All right, so there are 2 more things I want to hit on very briefly. One is, so we are now in maybe the third, not maybe, I think definitely the third longest stretch that we've had without a formal constitutional amendment. I guess, the 27th Amendment in 92 is ratified in 92, but, introduced at the very beginning and is not a particularly meaningful constitutional amendment anyway. So it's really the 26th Amendment in 1971 that's the last meaningful substantive amendment to the Constitution. That you say several times in the book that when amendment becomes impossible, the risk of insurrection rises, and essentially describe the process of amendment as a way to sort of seek change without violent rupture within the sort of polity. And I don't think you're making a strong kind of monocausal claim that the failure of amendment makes it impossible for us actually to kind of live and sort of resolve our problems in a peaceful way. But I guess how correlated, or what can you talk about the relationship between what feels like a profound moment of constitutional breakdown, maybe that's just me, that's just my feeling, but that it feels like we are in at this moment, and the fact that we seem to have lost the ability to amend the written Constitution?
Yeah, I think the Constitution changes all the time, and it's going to change because it's a very old document and there are all kinds of pressures on it. And it has within it a mechanism for change that's designed to be a peaceful method of change that makes change possible but difficult. And it turned out it's much more difficult than it was intended to be, because recall that the Constitution was written before there were political parties. And the framers did not anticipate that there would ever be political parties. So they couldn't have anticipated the kind of partisanship, even in the 19th century, the kind of sectionalism that worsened over the course of their lifetimes. And they certainly couldn't have anticipated the polarization that makes it possible for Congress to pass anything even by a simple majority. So they thought they were leaving, a door that was open, and the door's basically locked. It's slammed shut and it's locked. So someone can figure out how to pick the lock, that could happen. But meanwhile, the Constitution is going to change. And so when it isn't amended by formal amendment, the Constitution generally changes by Supreme Court decisions. And, that works until it doesn't, because people tend to be somewhat unprincipled about the Supreme Court. They like an activist court if they like who's on the court, and they don't like an activist court when they don't like who's on the court. And so,
Amen,
progressives
sister.
want amendments when the court is conservative. And they oppose amendments when the court is progressive. And conservatives are equally unprincipled about that. So that sort of kind of wave-like pattern, there's amendments and then the court decides. There's amendments and then the court. It's kind of been all across American history. I think this is a different moment because the court, yes, is making those decisions and is offering up new interpretations of the Constitution even when they disguise those novelties as restorations of old interpretations. But actually, mainly the executive is changing the Constitution right now by fiat, by declaration, by dictate. And that there's no provision for that in our Constitution whatsoever. And there's no check against that except for the Supreme Court, which hasn't exercised much of a check lately. I mean, we shall see there. But I think what we're witnessing is among the costs of I would say most Americans don't know that it's possible to amend the Constitution.
Well, young people were not, people were not even alive the last time we meaningfully did it, right? 1971.
Whatever. I was 4 years old, so I didn't remember that. And some people remember the defeat of the ERA, but it's just not a thing that we talk about. And maybe we shouldn't. Like, I don't know that it's something that we could or should be doing right now. I actually trying to the book isn't an argument for amendment or for holding a constitutional convention. It's really not an argument for anything except having a better history.
Yeah. So maybe I'll ask one more question and then we'll go to the crowd because, so if you said the door is locked and picking it is maybe the best we could hope for, the Supreme Court remains the kind of final arbiter, for better or worse, of executive power and essentially everything else. And so the book is, particularly in the last quarter or third, very critical of the ascent of originalism, right? The kind of sort of quasi history practiced by a majority of justices on the current Supreme Court. And it does link the kind of end of meaningful amendment to the Constitution. So in 71, we have the 26th Amendment, guaranteeing the right to vote for people 18 and over, and also almost get across the finish line with an amendment abolishing the Electoral College, right? That is this kind of like tragic chapter in the book with Birch Bayh, the senator who did actually successfully get the 25th and 26th done, but not the abolition of the college. So that coincides in time with the ascent of originalism, as the early ascent, at least, of originalism as a method. And you do think those two things are connected. So can you talk a little bit about that? And maybe if the book is not going to be a roadmap for reviving amendment because it's just so hard in the current polity, maybe there are things that could speak to the originalists on the current court that might shift things just enough to make a real difference.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's important, I think, to reveal about originalism is that it is, yes, a judicial philosophy that has developed in good faith by people who are principled actors, and I don't in any way mean to demean or question their principles, but it is also a political product of a political moment, and it is also a product of conservatives' failure to democratically win constitutional amendment. So if you think about what happened, in 1954 after Brown v. Board of Education, since then, most attempts to amend the Constitution have come from conservatives, beginning with proposed amendments to overturn Brown v. Board of Education. A lot of constitutional amendments, because amendment is the people's ability to check the power of the Supreme Court. They wanted to overturn Brown v. Board of Education. In the 1960s, there was a nearly successful move to call for a constitutional convention to overturn the one man, one vote redistricting decisions of the Supreme Court. Even before Roe was decided, but certainly immediately after Roe was decided in 1973, a large number of proposed amendments to overturn Roe versus Wade. And in the 1970s, when the ERA failed, it then became pretty clear that the constitutional amendment just was not going to work, no matter who was going to be bringing a constitutional amendment to bear, because Phyllis Schlafly's campaign to stop the ERA just revealed, as the child labor defeat had revealed in the 20s and 30s, that amendment, the door had basically slammed shut. And so fiscal and social conservatives, are defeated in amending the Constitution. They can't exercise Article 5, but they have, since the rise of the Warren Court, been indicting judicial activism. So they complain all the time that the court is legislating from the bench. They are amending the Constitution by judicial decision. So legal conservatives can't say, we need to get on the court and start changing the Constitution because we can't use Article 5 because we don't have the votes and because Article 5 is basically defunct. So they come up with a different strategies, like we need to get on the court and we're going to not change the Constitution, we're going to restore it to its original meaning. And it's a very brilliant rhetorical move, honestly, as a kind of political strategy. And it begins to be implemented in the term originalism is coined in 1980. It begins to be implemented in 1982 with Reagan's Justice Department. Edwin Meese makes originalism the official policy of the Justice Department. Any judge nominated to the federal judiciary has to pass an originalist litmus test. This is all done in the ramp up to 1987, which is the bicentennial of the Constitution. Those of you who are here may remember the We the People parade in Philadelphia. Reagan came to speak. Mickey and Minnie had a big parade in Florida. So that bicentennial constitutional moment, which happens to also be when Robert Bork is in the hearings before the Judiciary Committee promoting originalism, and although he was defeated, originalism certainly prevailed. So I just think it's actually kind of important to lay out that history, because the idea that originalism is not judicial activism, that's not really a defensible proposition. I'm sorry, it's not defensible. But the idea that it is more democratic as a means of judicial interpretation, I think that is defied by the historical record. So, it is many things, and there are many different people who subscribe to many different varieties of originalism, but it is not original to the Constitution.
All right, I think I can take a couple of questions from the crowd. There are a couple of microphones.
Yeah, I'm going to skip ahead here. As a matter of fact, I think I might just go ahead and end the show here. Seems like everybody's heading out to dinner or whatever, and I guess I should take a hint. One last thing before I go. I just found out a couple days ago that there's a new show on Hulu called All's Fair, and it stars what's her name? Kim Kardashian. I think she might even be the headliner. Anyway, she's playing a lawyer in this, they call it a dramedy. It's about a group of women divorce lawyers. So I figure she might actually have some expertise there. So I'm not going to play the trailer. I thought you could play trailers on YouTube without much of a problem, but I played a trailer. I guess it was Saturday, or maybe it was this morning. Time blends together when you get old. But anyway, it doesn't look like something I'd particularly be interested in, but who knows? I may watch an episode, but it looks pretty slick. And I just can't imagine that a group of women divorce lawyers in a TV procedural would be my thing. So with that, you know what? I may just go ahead and play this. That way I don't have to do it tomorrow. This is Iramiose Frimpong, and I wish Ryan were here. I may just send this to him. Ryan, last Friday or so, was touting how great Mississippi is. Not for its education system. It was something about Mississippi being richer than England, which didn't impress me much. But he would be thrilled, or will be thrilled, to know that Mississippi is out of the basement when it comes to its high school or its K through 12 education system.
America, my name is Iramiose Frimpong. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Mississippi Miracle. And the Mississippi Miracle refers to the way in which Mississippi went from 47th in reading to 16th in reading, based on a change in education
What's up there, Cinderoni?
and
See you.
schools, without necessarily a change in education dollars. And this is important because often we confuse what works in education we conflate that with money. We assume that the more dollars we spend, the better the education system will be. But actually, dollars are best spent defending against bad culture. And if you can change the culture directly, you don't even have to change the dollars. And this should be clear when you just think about, say, something like a marriage, right? So would you rather make $300,000 a year and be married to someone who's bad at being a partner and a parent to your children? Or would you rather make $50,000 a year and be married to someone who's good at being a partner and good at being a partner to you and a co-parent with your children, right? If you think the $300,000 a year somehow makes up with the bad culture that you put into your house, you are ignorant. And it's okay, I'm here to disabuse you of your ignorance. If you actually think about the situation, you would know that you don't need the money, you need the culture. And insofar as you have the money is to defend you from bad culture. Trust me, unless you are incompetent in a profound way, you want the $50,000 a year and a person who's very good at being a partner and a parent, rather than the $300,000 a year and the person with a deficient sense of partnership and parenting, and is going to screw up your kids. And since they're in the house, you're going to screw up the kids in ways that you can't actually defend against, right? So money doesn't solve cultural problems. Money is what may offer a defense.
You know, that is such a good point, and it goes back to that first video I showed opening the show, Liberation or Material Gain or whatever it was called. This is one thing that I hear constantly from the John Galts of the world and others of his ilk, and you all know who you are. Entrepreneurship. It's a very Booker T. Washington thing. And in my opinion, and many people will yell at me for saying this, I tend to think that, you know, you can do in 2025, you can be both Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. But in my opinion, this entrepreneurial Booker T. Washington, wait your turn bullshit is capitulation to white supremacy. And, you know, that may have been something that was necessary back in the early 19th century, you know, when Booker T. Washington was pretty much acknowledged to be the leader of the blacks. This is 2025, and people can do a lot more than be entrepreneurs. Not everybody's an entrepreneur. I seriously wish that I had the entrepreneurial spirit, but I literally think that if all you can be, all you tell your kids to be, don't be a historian, don't be an engineer, be an entrepreneur. It's capitulation. And I don't give a fuck if Dave agrees with me or not. I will go toe to toe with anyone who wants to come up here and push that bullshit. Okay. And to be honest, it's even worse if you're the type of entrepreneur that John Galt is, where entrepreneurship is just fucking taken to the point where, you know, abusing black people is your business model. I sure as shit don't want to do that. And I will reemphasize it. Money isn't everything. And what black people do when they push the entrepreneurship, Clarence Thomas is like the king. Clarence Thomas and Thomas Sowell and all those folks, Shelby Steele. Basically, what their message is, hey, we're not going to get political power. We're not going to get, you know, any social power. Economics is something that we can do. And, you know, we might be second-class citizens, but we'll be rich second-class citizens. That is premium. Be brave. That is premium. Be brave. thought. I think money is a part of life. I don't think it's a whole way of life. Great one. You and I will disagree on that. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'd actually have to go and follow that up, TKJ3. A good portion of Booker T. Washington's day was during the Great Migration. So if most people were living on the land, it was quickly changing. Today, I will say it's maybe 60-40. 60% of people don't live in the inner city, but a great portion of the legacy Black population in the United States does live in an urban environment. So, and not very many. I had the statistic, but I can't remember what it is. Most Black people do not live rural. In the South, they do, but if you looked nationwide, I don't think that is true anymore. The other thing I want to add is during Jim Crow, I think Booker T. Washington did have a point, but post 1964, in theory, a Black child can be whatever his or her abilities and hard work will make them. I'm just not that. I'm not the sort of person who's going to go, hey, you can call me the N-word all you want as long as I'm a millionaire. No, I want it all. I want not only the money, but I want the political power, etc. We are full citizens, and until America can figure out how to solve its whiteness problem, I personally keep fighting. I'm not going to settle in the ghetto with a business model that just fucking abuses Blacks. And then my second job is showing it on the internet. I'm not going to settle for that.
Against culture. And people ask, Ivan, when you say culture all this time, what do you mean? Culture is what allows you or enables you or tells you how to turn freedom into meaning. Right? Our institutions, marriage, parenthood.
Well, yeah, I was saying back in Booker T. Washington's day, it was probably sage advice. But this is 2025, CK.
On what is good.
Black people,
and
we're not limited. We're not limited to the farm. And we're not limited to the hood.
Good. If these things were natural, then we wouldn't need culture. You don't have to teach a rock to fall. It falls by nature. So the problem is a lot of our
yes, Deacon Dave, I'm saying Blacks have no political power.
It's not great, and we actually have natural impulses to do things that aren't good, right? So culture is how we turn freedom into meaning, is how we turn our free actions into memorable ones that are actually worthwhile. So we do that through culture, and we transmit it through culture. So we need cultural institutions to tell us what counts for a good education and how we should administer it. And money won't answer all of those questions in the same way that money won't always tell you how to be a good spouse, and it won't tell you how.
I want to elaborate on the point. Deacon Dave, no, Blacks do not have political power under certain circumstances, like Georgia in 2020. There was an instance in also 2020 election, and then in South Carolina, the South Carolina primary is basically what made Biden president, essentially. There's a book called The Devil You Know, which I've talked about on this show months ago now, where Charles Blow, who's a former New York Times columnist, I don't know what he's doing now. He talked about, he's one of the few people that I can think of, one of the few Black people, legacy Black Americans that I can think of that actually proposed a plan to achieve political power, a reverse migration. Most Blacks live in the South to begin with. If he said, hey, look, all you folks in the cities, let's move back down south to places like South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, not so much Texas. But there is a viable way, he thinks, to consolidate political power in the Old South, or at least some of the states in the Old South. So we do have a modicum of political power. But as it stands now, any political power that we have is essentially easily checked by Hispanics and other minorities. So no, we don't have political power. If every Black voted for, I don't know, just some candidate in the future, it's still possible that candidate would not be elected. So the only power we really have is in coalition with Democrats currently, so maybe some people would call that political power. I don't. So, and it may be utopian to think that, 12% of the American population can ever have that kind of power. I admit it's utopian, but to me, maybe it's just the Don Quixote in me. Keep tilting at the windmill. The bottom line is that I will reemphasize it. If you are satisfied with just economic power, then that's perfectly fine. I'm not going to sit here and debate back and forth with, someone who thinks entrepreneurship is the way to the mountaintop. Sure, you go ahead and try it. I just don't think that's it. I think it's a 20th century solution to a historical problem. It didn't work in the 20th century. I don't think entrepreneurship works now, not alone. You got to have the total package. You got to be an entrepreneur, but, being stuck just to being a millionaire without political power, you're just someone who can buy a boat. And so that's enough of that.
To be a good parent. The number of wealthy parents who screw up their kids because they think money will solve all of their problems when they actually just needed culture.
Yeah, well, see, Dave, this
parents-
is your problem. This is SKC's problem. It's actually most of the Black people that I know in this particular sector, the Hood Conservatives, the John Galts, the B Braves, you all, in my mind, have some weird mass psychosis where if someone isn't basically agreeing with your bullshit, lock, stock and barrel, you automatically become pro-Black and talk about grievance culture. I have nothing to be pissed off about. I'm fine. I don't have any particular economic worries or, anything like that. So I'm not making these arguments out of any grievance. I'm making the argument because it is what I think is true. Entrepreneurship is not enough. Political power may be quixotic, but I think just basically going the Booker T. Washington route in 2025 is capitulation to white supremacy. I said it, and you know what? I'm not even mad when I say it, but I'm not going to sit here and do a show and go along with, ooh, everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. I don't think that is particularly successful. Just like I don't think there is one magic bullet to solve all legacy Black America's problems. There is no one Black community. We have not been even remotely unified, if we ever were as a community. Definitely not post 60s. Are we one contiguous, monolithic, everybody believes in the same thing sort of demographic? There are many Black communities, plural, and there is no one solution. And people who think that entrepreneurship in the Black community, the quote Black community, is the magic bullet, they're as full of shit as anyone else. And anyone who wants to come up here and do the back and forth with me on that, you know what the results will be, but why not have at it?
Who actually don't have a lot of money but have culture. A lot of educators are like this. They do pretty well by their kids because like two educators will have a decent culture.
Don't be a
and if they don't
Roland
have a lot of
Martin.
money,
Do I
and
sound
it
like
turns
Roland
out
Martin to you,
that
Deacon?
they raise pretty good kids
As a matter
that
of
way.
fact, apparently you don't watch a lot of Roland Martin, or you believe what everybody else says about Roland Martin. Roland Martin is the Ace Boone Coon of Black entrepreneurship. All he talks about is the Black press as a business. He is first in line with that entrepreneurship stuff. So Deacon Dave, you need to do your homework before you start calling people Roland Martin. Roland Martin would agree with you and your gulag mates on the entrepreneurship stuff.
So culture is what tells you how to turn your freedom into meaning. And education has a bad culture shot through by a bunch of liberals, and liberals are always kind of market-based and a little bit lazy, and they sell laziness. By the way, liberals will sell laziness. Liberals say that you don't have to be a parent. Kids will raise themselves naturally if you just do what's fun. Liberals will tell you to give your kids graphic novels instead of chapter books because chapter books are hard and kids should be able to do what they want to do. Liberals
I've never
always will
heard
tell
them
you
called
it's
chapter books before.
Quasi-market-based
We just call them books
So they'll always
in my neck of the
sell
woods.
laziness. They'll sell you the easiest road, and you want to buy it because it's easy. And raising kids well is hard. It's not easy. You got to spend a lot of time with some frustrating beings whom you happen to love but are also frustrated by. And they'll sell education tech. This app will teach your kid, whatever. No, the app will not teach you. You need to teach your kid what to do and how to do it. You need to monitor them intensely, and there's no shortcut. There's no shortcut. So the Mississippi Miracle is a cultural revolution in which the state of education from the state level to the classroom says we're no longer just passing kids who can't read past third grade. If they can't pass third grade, there's a gate. We keep them. No more social promotion onto fourth grade. So we're not going to pass you unless you can actually do fourth grade work, which is a way. It's a way. I want to incentivize parents to just take a better, a more culturally appropriate role in their kids' education. Right now, parents think that if they just go out and take that second shift and earn more money and work from 3 to 11 or whatever, they don't have to actually work with their kids. They can just have money and then send their kids to school, and the school will do all the work. I'm saying that now actually we need parents who actually know how to work with their kids. And so we need to pay parents for the kids' test scores. And so now parents will be culturally incentivized, materially incentivized to not take that second shift from 3 to 11, but instead sit down and teach your kid how to read, because they'll get paid, $10,000, $15,000 at the end of the year if the kid passes a grade level proficiency test. Right? So I think getting parents more involved and in changing the incentives around what constitutes good parenting is the cultural tack that will take even states like Mississippi. Mississippi is important because it's got a lot of poor Black people and not a great infrastructure. So if you can do it in Mississippi, you can literally do it in anywhere. And if you can do it in Mississippi, you can do it. It's actually possible. It's actually possible if you just kick out all of the liberal white women who told you to do whole words and not do sight reading, and to do sight words instead of teaching kids phonics. And they said, any reading matters, is even if it's graphic novels. No, you need your kids in chapter books as soon as possible and consistently, and understanding that this is books and you need to take the screens away. Kids don't need screens at all. So you change these cultural things, you're not going to have to pay for expensive rehabilitation. And a lot of these cultural things are cheaper. Like it's cheaper not to have screens. Right. It's funny. Bad cultural ticks are so deeply imbued in American culture. I ran into an educator, professional educator, whose daughter couldn't read, and she was surprised that her daughter couldn't read because she did what they did in The Color Purple, where they put signs on all the things, and then she thought that if I put signs on all the things, this is a person who's actually an educator. She thought, if I put signs on all the things, then my kids will just kind of read through osmosis. No, you need to sit down and sound things out with your kid. Like, you need a system. And so she was surprised that her kid couldn't read because she's like, I did what they said in Color Purple. Surely it will work. No, it turns out it doesn't work. It turns out that you are part of a deficient culture and you didn't know the work you had to put in.
She watched a movie?
You just watched a movie that I don't like
Lord.
on other grounds. But it turns out that it doesn't work like that, right? So the Mississippi Miracle was a cultural change that did not start or end in increased funding, but came through just throwing out bad educational practices, right? It came through bad education, throwing out bad educational practices, right? And I said before, what's the most fascinating bit about it is that the campaign found a way to pull this off from state to the implementation at the classroom level without a lobby. I mean, it had a lobby without big money behind a lobby. So somehow it took over the cultural institutions and the media institutions and became persuasive without money. Because mostly what you give me, you don't give me money so that I become more persuasive. You give me money so I can reach a bigger audience, right? So the right ideas, if they're hidden, it doesn't really matter. So the money buys the audience. It doesn't necessarily buy the persuasive appeal. I mean, I can get glossier stuff if you give me a ton of money. If you go to www.funkyacademic.com, I can get glossier stuff, and I'd love to hire an editor to put up clips and do all of that. But you pretty much, you don't give me money to inform my content. You give me money so that my content can be better disseminated. And yet somehow this campaign worked in Mississippi. It disseminated the truth in a persuasive way that changed policy without a huge money campaign that I have heard of. It's just like the truth went out. Like somehow the sense that obviously it's bad to have screens in schools. Obviously it's good to have phonics as opposed to whole word education. These things are clear to me. These things are clear to me, and they should be clear to you, except it means that parents have to do more work. So parents don't want to hear that. Small class sizes are better than bigger class sizes. These things are clear. You shouldn't need that much data to convince you of that. The problem is that is going to require more of you, so you don't want to hear it. So somehow these countercultural reforms were passed in Mississippi, probably because everyone gave up on Mississippi, or it was so low at the bottom that they didn't have any pride keeping the culture destitute, right? So Mississippi was 47th in the nation. And, if they were 30th in the nation, they might have had pride, and pride keeps people doing stupid things. And since they probably figured they have nothing to lose, we're already 47. Let's try this thing where we actually teach kids how to read in using phonics. Let's try this thing where we actually hold kids who can't do fourth grade work back and keep them in third grade. And it turns out it worked. And now they are actually seeing a decrease in retention numbers in terms of kids they have to retain in third grade, because the culture is changing. So now people are coming into third grade prepared because they know that, one, you mean business. If you can't do this test, then you can't go to fourth grade. And also they're just it's a deeper expectation that people will be able to do the work and not just be socially promoted. So they they succeeded in expressing a miracle without changing money, without raising taxes, but just by implementing better strategies. How they popularized it, how they got the policy changed, that's going to be a fascinating story, because usually you need money to buy the politicians to get the policy change. But if you use money to buy the politicians.
By the way, I found a video that I do want to look at right after this. It's a YouTube provider, I'm sorry, content creator that I know of him. TMKC, you may know Ruthless Truth. I've seen him around, but apparently he has a channel, and this dude is a piece of work. But he's got a fairly short, hour-long or so video, excuse me, called Nuclear Fam. What does he call it? Nuclear Family Equals Nuclear War. So I have to hear that, especially after hearing Irami talk about about family and culture and all this stuff. I gotta know what he's talking about with a title like that. So I got to do better with my titles. So let's finish this up.
Then some ed tech company is also going to throw around money and buy those same politicians. So somehow they had a group of politicians that were inured to all of the money that's paying for bad systems. Like, running education in a horrible way is very profitable, especially for a state that nobody actually believes that your kids can be educated anyway. So it took a quality of belief in truth of phonics, in truth of holding kids back, to actually pull off this miracle of going from 47th to 16th in a state shot through with poor black kids.
Well, it's good to know that Irami can misuse a word. It's good to know that even Irami can misuse a word. He used inured. It doesn't mean, I don't think he used it correctly, but had to point that out.
Like, it says the limits of money. It says the limits of money. And I will reiterate the thought experiment I posed at the beginning. If you think money solves all of your institutional problems, all of your educational problems, all of your cultural problems, you would probably take $300,000 a year being married to a bad spouse who is culturally deficient, while that same spouse is raising your kids, is helping you raise your kids.
See, Deacon Dave, if you're still out there, yeah, even Irami. Of course, Irami tends to be a little bit of an outlier. Money makes life easier, but it does not necessarily solve your problems unless your problem is a poverty problem. You know, if your problem is poverty, then of course money's gonna help. But and I'm surprised. I'm surprised that people like the Gulag and the urban landlord and all these people want to push entrepreneurship, but yet they constantly talk about culture. Quote, black culture is so toxic. Why are they not addressing the culture problem? The culture problem is not going to be solved. Now, maybe Dave, you speak for all those anti-black blacks. Do they actually think that money will solve culture problems? Help me out here, or anybody else who's like worldview aligned with Deacon Dave and SKC and all those folks, or John Galt. Money doesn't solve cultural problems. If anything, it exacerbates them. Look at a lot of these rappers. I wouldn't say, we got a lot of millionaires out there from the rap music industry, and they are their own problem sometimes.
rather than $50,000 a year with a good spouse who is actually culturally top.
No. Hey,
I think if you're smart, and you can.
Hey, Dave, if the Gulag are a bunch of elites, they're economic elites. They're certainly not cultural elites.
You can fix this in the comments. Tell me in the comments. If you're smart, you'll take the $50,000 a year with a spouse who like gets it, and is culturally on point. Because in America, you can make that work. You can find a place. You're not going to make it work in San Francisco necessarily, but you can make that work in other places if you don't have to play defense against like bad culture. Like you can. You can do it. You can do it. Now, $300,000 a year, if you have $300,000 a year coming in, but you're married to someone with a bad culture, that money is going to go places you don't want it to go. It's going to go to all these rehabs. You're still not going to be able to control what you need to control.
It's going to go to a bunch of sneakers.
Could go to all the fancy schools, but then you end up raising a snob. But since you have a bad culture, you're not going to have the cultural skills to deal with a snob. And so
no, I'm afraid not.
Like this brat,
you're self-deluded.
Partner can't deal with because it's got a bad culture, and parenting is very hard. So, Aldrich Hopoi says, "Show me the money; they'll take the bag." No, you don't want the bag when kids are involved, and when the marriage is involved. Because if you take the $300,000 a year married to someone who's with a deficient culture, they're going to stress you out in ways and screw up your kids in ways that money cannot remediate. Money cannot remediate. You only need enough to keep away from bad culture. But
I kind of agree with that.
Edric DeHoy says they can take.
That's a very Erasmus point. And by the way, speaking of culture, I one of these days actually do need to go up to Q Butter's show and hop up on the panel. I actually think Western culture is not the only good culture. I think if you have, say, a Pan-African or an Africa-centric education like Q Butter, I think that's pretty much, I think he would agree. Maybe he'd correct me, but I think that's good culture. It's not my culture. It's not something, that I would want, to raise my son in. But if you are, of a Pan-African mindset, I think that's good culture. So I happen to have been raised, in Western culture, so it is my culture, I guess. But I'm not that type of snob that to think that someone who's in an Africa-centric environment, but taking, calculus in third grade, that sort of environment, hey, that's excellence, just maybe not the excellence that, a soul brother or a Gulag member or one of those people, anti-black blacks, may not agree. Cause I know the urban landlord went after Q Butter like something ridiculous. Like, we don't need rockets. We need landlords or some bullshit like that.
The bad culture and the money. And I'm saying that you'll end up spending all of that money dealing with the disease that you brought into your house. So I'm just saying you could hash it out in the comments. And if you appreciate what I'm doing, you should go to www.funkyacademics.com, because I'm trying to raise the quality of culture in your household and help you not make the quality of mistakes that I see especially too many black people make, chasing the bag and not taking culture appropriately seriously, and what it takes to actually raise kids, right? So like culture, a defective culture is going to tell you that the app will raise your kids, that it's okay that they're on the smartphone all the time. It's okay that they're scrolling TikTok. It's okay that they're reading graphic novels. It's okay that they're learning how to read through sight words as opposed to phonetics. None of that is okay. None of that is okay. You'll raise a kid who's deficient in ways that you can't even imagine. But liberal market-based culture will sell you laziness. It will sell you that you can have all of these good things without doing any work. You don't have to raise your kid. You don't have to read with them. You don't have to make sure. You don't have to get on them. You don't have to fight with them. You don't have to make them do things they don't want to do. Liberal culture will tell you that. And it will sell the teachers that and the schools that if you don't watch that, if you don't watch it. So the fact that Mississippi fought against that culture and actually instituted hard reforms to make kids actually do work that they're not necessarily wanting to do is a fascinating truth. And black people, this is a truth that we need to take seriously because we need to figure out what we can do without money because we don't have a ton of money. And I'm saying there are things we can do without money. And also we need to understand that a lot of whites vote for culture because, especially poor whites, they don't have money. And so they need a government culture that will support their point of view because they don't have the private money for to afford the defense against like the deficient and malicious culture, right? So like a lot of the anti-trans stuff comes from poor white people who just don't want to have to deal with schools marketing what they consider to be a deviant lifestyle to their children. They don't have the money to go to private school. They don't have money to go to Catholic school. So they need their public schools to actually have.
Well, actually, they need school vouchers, apparently.
Is through voting in the people they vote in, right? So they use their votes for cultural control because they don't have the money for the cultural prophylactic that money often provides, right? If you can change the culture directly, you don't need money. Because what you usually use that money for is cultural defense anyway. Like if you have good public schools, you don't have to buy your private school. Does that make sense? Is that clear? So the goal is changing culture. And the means isn't necessarily through more funding. You could rearrange funding. Like I said, the first state that figures out a way to pay parents for their kids' test scores is going to blow it up because that's
Yeah, well, he and I don't agree on that. I think if you're paying parents to do the best for their kids, that's not good culture. You're fostering another type of bad culture, in my opinion. That is an irony thing. He thinks he's definitely thinking outside the box there. But I think that, paying parents to do the best for your kids. I know that our billionaire class would never go for something like that. They need uneducated people to work in their chicken plants, in their orchards picking fruit. That's what they're preparing to do.
That's the last thing that needs to be, we need to disabuse ourselves of. We need to disabuse ourselves of the notion that our schools can teach every kid regardless of the family environment that the kid comes from. We need to actually try to create better family environments. Our schools are set for certain sort of family environments. And if you come from that certain sort of family environment, the school multiplies. But the school is only a multiplier. It doesn't, we're not talking loaves. I guess we are talking loaves and fishes. We're not talking turning something into nothing, nothing into something. It'll multiply. So if you give it 3, it'll root that. I mean, it'll square that, right? You'll end up with 9. But if you give it 0, you'll end up with 0. So actually that's 1, right? So anyway, you have to think of schools as a multiplier, and ultimately, like I said, the first school that figures out that we need to restructure the incentives of parents so that parents aren't incentivized to necessarily make more money, but they're incentivized instead to pay attention to their kid directly at home That's going to be the first state that actually like blows it up. They're going to go from 48th to 3rd because now parents are on the same page as the school. And the only way you're going to get parents on the same page as a school is paying the parents to be on the same page as school. Because right now, the culture tells them that the best way they can be the best parent they can is by making more money. And that's just not necessarily true. That's just not necessarily true. So yeah, Mississippi got rid of social promotion. Mississippi brought back phonics, got rid of some of the junk science around reading. And it turns out that they then took they took out California and all these other schools. And this is how immigrants work, right? This is how you can come to the United States at the bottom and in a few years be at the top. The same way Mississippi did it, by having the right culture and tuning out the noise. You could go from 46th to 16th, not by adding more money, but by tuning out the noise and coming with a good culture. And that's what I'm trying to tell. And that's Black people. We need to pay attention to this because we need to do all the things that we can do without money in order to create the culture and the power to actually get, money and stabilize it. Right? Because if you do these things without money, it's going to be hard to stabilize because someone will then enough people are going to be liable to bribery. So you make the cultural shift, but you need to also make the economic one so that people aren't liable to black side and be bribed. And they're doing something that's not good. All right. So thank you for your time. If you appreciate what I'm doing, go to www.funkyacademic.com. I want you to understand Mississippi as a story of how you succeed without money. And take that and you do it through culture. And you can beat everybody with money. You can beat the kids with money if you have a superior culture. So thank you for your time, and I will talk to you at another time.
All right, so this will be the last, and I just have to see it because I'm curious about the title and what Ruthless Truth would even talk about. So the title is Nuclear Family Equals Nuclear War.
You're making a motion picture, Michelangelo.
When in actuality, the nuclear family is a nuclear war. Because if it wasn't, the happy life and the happy wife thing wouldn't be an issue. What's up? Oh, you're a picture lady, at lady, what underscore Zyrax? Okay, she done switched her shit up. But honestly, the nuclear family just seems like it's one big war. And I want to listen. I understand to the community where we think is most successful of building a nation or a people that in theory, the nuclear family would be ideal in 1801, 1902. But in 2025, that's no longer the standard. Marriage is the value of marriage has gone down greatly. Right? People are getting married and divorced like it's going out of style. Left and right, left everywhere. Next thing you know. And women who are still married, the people who are still in their marriages, right? If they're not over 65, it seems like they're complaining, right? A lot of married women complaining, talking about, I never want to get married. I didn't want to have kids. I just, it's just too much for me. He gets too much attention. I want the attention. And it's clear that most people get married end up in divorce. 1 million
That's
divorces a year.
not. Hold on one sec. Is that true? I thought it was 50-50. Let's see. Divorce rate in America. Hmm. Oh, let's see here. Okay, so I'm looking in 2024, the divorce rate is between 40 and 50%. So technically he's wrong. Now, second marriages are like at 60%, but he's wrong. He's wrong about he needs to be more specific for starters. But it's between 40 and 50%, which is not most.
So I just want to know, why is this so common, right? That's the question. Why is this so common? I mean, when two people get married, this is supposed to be a union of joy, a union of respect.
You know, that's an odd, I think it's an odd perspective on his part. Maybe one of these days I'll actually go up there and talk to him, but is a lot of people get divorced a reason not to get married? I'm curious to know if a lot of younger Black people think that, or younger people in general, but legacy Black Americans in particular. Is that why people shit on marriage? Because so many people get divorced? That seems oh, where's he crashing out, CK? I really shouldn't care. He must be over on CT's channel. Probably that's why there's nobody in my chat. They're all watching John Galt crash out.
You're supposed to be stepping into the next level of life, right? My wife, my kids, her husband, her kids, everything else doesn't matter at this point. It's just about that. And that is supposed to bring a certain amount of joy and respect and honor. That's what getting married and having a nuclear family is supposed to bring. Right? You date and you go through the trials and tribulations with a guy, and then he proposes to you, and then you accept. Then you have a nice, beautiful wedding. Your family, your friends, everybody comes. Well, when they come, should they be congratulating or should they be crying? Because I think now, should you go to the wedding? Should we start crying at the wedding, like a funeral? Should we treat weddings like funerals? I mean,
Wow,
it seems like everybody.
that's a novelty.
It seems like everybody.
How about just
married,
not go?
Pretty much.
Just don't go to the wedding.
There's a few exceptions, There's a few exceptions, but majority of people seem to be disgruntled. And it doesn't matter what level of economic success they're at. If they're average, there's a lot of complaints. If they're poor, you definitely know there's a lot of complaints. But if they marry a rich man, it's even more complaints, right? And Jada Pickett, Tia Mowry, and so forth. The list is so long. So it seems to me, in my estimated evaluation, I could be wrong. Chat, correct me if I'm wrong. I stand to be corrected. It seems to me when you marry is like walking into an institution. Like it's like you're in a prison down there, and everybody's looking to break out, particularly women. And now you have this war. Now it's an internal war, right? There's a term like she doesn't agree with him. They have disagreements, and now they can't seem to come to terms, and the house is now divided, right? And now they're walking around. Everybody's walking around on eggshells. The kids, y'all don't want to. They don't want to, smile at each other. Just because there are complaints don't mean they aren't happy. Ruthless, come on, man. Well, you can't complain about happiness. If you're happy, let's say, okay, let's look at this. She said, just because they complain. Anyone who complains about the situation is obviously unhappy, Zyrax. They're not overjoyed. When you complain, you do not express happiness. You're disgruntled. Right? These complaints are very divisive, right? They're very undermining because internal, if you keep it to yourself, that's one thing. But when you come on a podcast or when you tell your friends, your family, now it becomes, a narrative. Everybody look at your husband, or everybody look at your wife. Well, mostly women. Everybody look at your husband like, oh, he ain't shit. Girl, leave him. Self-love. And I believe the complaints are the start of the cancerous marriage. It's like a cancer that's eaten slowly. True. And I do agree with that. They're unhappy about the situation. Yes, but it adds up, Zyrax. It adds up, right? It starts a little bitty complaint. And then there'll be a bunch of little bitty complaints, which then brings what? Animosity. Now you have an argument, right? Because most people, what happens when most people complain? That means that they had a conversation about it before and it just didn't get solved. So now they start complaining. The solution comes first. Okay, look, I don't like this. Or can you do this differently?
Well, the thing is CKJ3, he's got, I just looked in on it. He's got Ponder and Pancho Villa up there. It shouldn't be that mean. Man, they don't care what they just think John, actually they probably think John is smarter when he's slurring his words. So anyway, you know what? Let's watch a couple minutes of it before I duck out of here. I'm waiting on Nightish to start up because I wanna ask him about his dating future. He and RLM apparently they're about to date. You know what? Actually, oh my God, he is slurring bad. Holy shit. Is he listening to CT's show? Hey, is John Galt listening to CT's show? That's what it sounds like. Let's see. He's still begging black people to pay for. Oh my God, really? Oh, he's on CT's panel. How the fuck does that work? You know what? Actually, why do I really care how it works? That's probably the better question. Let's see here. Because I was just looking at CT's channel, the thumbnail anyway, and it looked like I didn't see John up there. Let's see. Where is CT's show?
Right? And then it continues. And then the complaints come after that. So therefore, if it's unsolved, that means it's only going to get worse. Because when you complain, typically it annoys you. It gets under your skin. And what happens?
Oh, I see. So he's on CT's show while he's on his show.
It makes you start disliking the person.
Yeah, I'm not that fucking interested.
It makes you start. It also breeds resentment. And resentment, you know what that means? That's the door. That's the death knell of the marriage. It's over. Because why? Your feelings start changing. Now you can't wait till they leave. And you hate it when they come home. You guys walk sexless marriages, right?
Hey, hey, CKJ3, Innate Ways just told John to get a glass of water, brother. I'm like, you know, and I guess I really shouldn't I really shouldn't laugh because I've been inebriated up on air before, so you know, there but before the grace of God go I. I think if you're going to do it, what you ought to do is not be on camera. That could actually be something that you might not want to do. But, you know, far be it from me. Let's see here. Let's see.
Y'all don't want to even have sex anymore. Hey, sugar bum bum. Yeah. Most family.
So what's this about John not using other people's content? If you call into another show while you're on your show and you're broadcasting it, is that using other people's content technically? Maybe not. I'd have to think about it, I guess.
Families are divided on a lot of issues.
You know what, CKJ3, I can't.
The divisiveness in the
CK, I'm not sure that I can agree with you. I think this is the content. I think this is the content that John Galt provides that keeps on giving. Being a monster pays, apparently, and I wish I could do it. Oh, you know what? I don't even want to think about that, CK. I don't even want to go there because you know how I feel about family and kids and stuff like that, making sure that, you know, they have as stable a home as you can provide them. I'm not going to even go there. What's up, Richard? Now, this dude, Ruthless Truth, is fascinating, actually.
in the house is because they can't come to terms. And it's not necessarily because they don't love each other. But it's mostly because there's some things in life you're going to have to accept. Right? You can't have every fucking thing your way.
Let me, Brian Nichols, you're my age. You do know where that money, the $250 to keep Waynisha housed or whatever her name is, you know where the money's going, right? Okay, I'm not about to fucking pay a fucking John Galt's rent. I'm not living in his dwelling, and I'm not contributing to John Galt's fucking pocket. Why the hell would I do that? Hopefully you're joking.
You gotta accept that he's not gonna put his shoes in the closet when he comes
Hey,
home.
Richard, I hope you're gonna, I hate to sound like your mother, but I hope you're gonna eat a vegetable with that. Something like a hot green
Right.
vegetable, not
I'm
lettuce.
complaining about my hubby to my hubby all the time, but that don't mean I'm unhappy with him. Sometimes I do it just to fuck with him.
Oh, and by the way, I fucking hate the word hubby. Thank God I don't remember my wife ever referring to me as her hubby. That's just ridiculous, and I would be tempted to divorce her just for calling me her hubby. And I never called her my wifey.
And that is not a good joke. You need to stop that shit, Zyrax.
Well, I
You
mean,
think, oh, I wanna fuck
fruit's
with him,
good
but that
enough.
shit gets under my
Fruit
skin,
is
and you
pretty
complaining
nutritious.
all the time to me about me. Oh my gosh, that is like
Pickles
that is like
on the
a motherfucker
burger.
hitting me with a
Really?
baseball bat every time they see me.
You should have an avocado
So I got a video.
or two
We're gonna watch. We're gonna see.
also
This is
there,
gonna break down the Cardi B
Richard.
and the Offset situation.
Are avocados paleo?
Because now they're
I
headed to
remember now.
divorce court, and now it's the nuclear war is in full form. Now the nuclear war, now the nukes have been set off.
Yeah, if he's gonna get up here and who is
It would
this?
be
Is
like
this
saying Paul McCartney was just a member of the Beatles. Ric Flair drip
Are we
6
comparing
million
him
records.
to Paul?
Yeah, that's
Well, Ric
Preach.
Flair drip 6 million records. All I'm saying is he's not a slouch. With that being said, I would say that Cardi B was still an upgrade for Homeboy. We will.
Oh my
definitely
God.
concede to
You
that
know what?
because
I'm not listening
she
to this
was
shit.
Absolutely more.
Okay, the other thing that annoys me, and maybe it's just my age, I'm just being a grumpy old man, but a bunch of fucking adults sitting up talking about Cardi B, you'll never convince me that they're mature adults. Hey, whole milk is not a vegetable there, sir. Just because cows eat grass doesn't mean all the nutrients transfer to their milk. Who is Stefan Diggs? No idea who he is. Not much benefit with pasteurized milk. Well, the benefit is you don't get a bunch of fucking bacteria, Slick. I suppose you drink your milk straight from the udder, Slick Rick, like Diwali. Diwali drinks his milk straight from the udder too. I've heard.
More popular than Homeboy when they got together, at least from what I saw. But that actually doesn't matter. Another thing I wanted to do, I know Shan, I completely agree with her with people being surprised that her next victim would be Stefan Diggs. I mean, what are we doing? Like, when you think about it, have y'all not seen WAP? Have y'all not seen her twerk as a pregnant mother? Have you not seen her get smashed on social media live? Like, what are we doing? What do you expect from her? She's a savage. When we got to understand that, like, that was the best that she could possibly do. Like, to find somebody wealthy and a brain, no, impossible. No respectable man would deal with a woman like Cardi B. I'm sorry. That's just the best that she's going to ever get, likely. And people don't have to like it, but I mean, we just have to look at it. You got to think about it. Just think about waking up next to that on a regular basis, or having to deal with conversations or make life decisions with someone who behaves like that. I mean, it is what it is. Her as an artist, that's the thing. We know she's talented at being a personality, right? As far as her writing her raps, she claims to write a lot of them, and you could take that as you want. Right. And I see there's a little bit of outrage from the percentage that he's asking for. Well, how divorces go, in many cases, it's a strategy to reach a little bit high and then end up with what you end up with. If anybody thinks that as a man, he's going to get 70% in the state of Georgia, or any state for that matter. I mean, come on, that's not happening. But he's going to get probably about half, I think so, half of all of their assets, which is fair if we're being consistent, because if that were a woman, do you think that Jeff Bezos' ex-wife earned half of what it was? No, absolutely not. We could say, okay, she was there, but I mean, how do you quantify what she did? She's doing the same thing that a woman who is with a man who makes $50,000 a year. So are we saying that that woman's better because she's with the better dude? Like, I'm just trying to see how much do women actually think being a homemaker is worth, not to devalue it, but how do you quantify it? How do you say that it's worth billions? Can we say that it's worth billions, but it's only worth 25,000 for?
Let's pause this bullshit. My bullshit meter is in the red here. So I promise this will be the last thing. Trump is on his plane gaggling with reporters. Unfortunately, it's audio only, but we'll listen into it. Ooh, Luba from Ukraine is on. That might actually be worth watching, but I don't feel like getting all hot and bothered.
Tariffs, I think we're the richest country in the world. United States. We're taking in
Oh shit.
hundreds of billions of
Yeah, this audio's not good.
Those are, really seriously rich countries, and they can handle it.
He does have
Particularly Erdogan, could they also help in the war between Russia and Ukraine?
Yeah, Erdogan can. He's respected by Russia. Ukraine, I can't.
stick to the perimeter of the grocery store. Wow, I never thought of that strategy. That's interesting.
Along with the weak ones, I get along with the tough ones. I don't know what that is, but Erdogan's been great with me. You know, when NATO has a problem with Erdogan, which they often do, they call me to talk to him, and I've never failed in working it out like immediately. Is that right? How's Caroline?
Can y'all hear this?
Can Caroline be replaced?
That's up to you, sir.
It'll never happen. Nobody wants. It'll never happen. Look.
Oops.
That face and those Katie and those lips, they move like a machine gun, right?
Countries you consider weak.
Okay, well, I can't get the audio higher. This is on the Air Force One, I guess, and he's just gaggling with
Overall, I thought that was
a bunch of reporters, and I've got on earbuds. I can barely hear him. So,
there's never been anything like
oh well.
So we're up, but you know what? I have to, because the plane is going to take off. But we'll come back.
At the White House on Friday?
I think so. Yeah. Bye, everybody. Thanks, President. Thank you. Have a good time. Thank you, everybody.
So I don't know. I was hoping fucking Nightish would start. Apparently, RLM has him. Apparently, RLM has him enthralled. Well, I got to do it. This outfit is awesome. We'll watch it for a little bit. I'm sorry, folks, but I got to watch it. You know what? I actually think this is a rerun. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Slick. I actually think this is a rerun. Maybe it's not. God damn. How is that top not like that top's not going to be there if she keeps moving around like this? Yo, chickens are like yard cats. Dude, don't ever die. Don't ever die in your chicken yard. They will eat you. Yeah, I'm just I'm literally just watching this, wondering about the physics of her halter top. Richard, do you ever use charcoal or wood? No. I didn't take it. Here, I'll give it back to you. There you go, Lupin. Not sure what happened there. I don't know that charcoal is that expensive. I mean, not if you don't use it a lot. Oh, but you know, you can get like wood chips. You can create smoke now that I think of it. No, dude, grilling, I used to grill every day. We had an enclosed porch, even in the wintertime. Now, in the wintertime, you probably want to cook in the kitchen because it's a heat source. But in the summertime, when it was hot, oh, yeah, we grill out every day. I see what you're saying. No, I don't know how a mod would take your wrench, Lupin. Is that possible? A mod can't take another mod's wrench. Oh, yeah, that's true, Richard. Lupin, I accidentally hid you earlier today. Sometimes I'll fat finger stuff. That might be why it disappeared. It was an accident. Sometimes I fat finger stuff and I'll accidentally delete people, but or hide people. But that could be why. But I can't even imagine why that would do it. Oh, the hide will do it? Okay, I got you. Well, it was totally by accident, so. You know what? While I'm thinking about this, yeah, I'm not going to be on here too much longer. I started watching this young lady, and now I'm enthralled myself. Let's see if it tells us. You know what? It doesn't say. This is just they're doing a 24-hour stream here. It's a little on the heavy side. What she's cooking is your dinner, Richard. Ooh, udon noodles. She's cooking a noodle dish. Udon for you. I know. Oh, chicken. Okay. So it's just basically stir-fried chicken over noodles. How is Be Brave doing? I haven't heard hide nor hair of him in a while. Is he still around? Oh, by the way, everybody, make sure everybody hits the like button. And if you're new, subscribe. Well, hopefully he's doing fine. By the way, make sure you support the host. The Sovereign Beer Fund is accepting investments. The GCM got on his ass. What on earth is this? Oh, this is a different video. All right, well, folks, I'm gonna wrap this up. It is getting late. Let's see. She probably oh no. She probably feeds her village or something. Hey, you know what? I could think of worse concepts for a show. Yeah, I do have a little bit of reading to do. Iguana hunting. Can't you eat iguanas? What you ought to do is go on one of those boa constrictor hunts. I don't think you're allowed to kill them. I think they trap them. But I watched a video about some place in the Everglades where they where you can go out and do like help them round up iguanas basically because they're an invasive species. So anyway, folks, I will be back in the morning, probably around 7:45, 8 o'clock or so. Lupin, I will do some research on the Code Noir because I, for some reason or another, have never thought to look into it. So that's a good idea. I hope that everyone has a good night. Happy grilling, Richard. And one of these days, you ought to put a camera on your grill and walk us through your process. So I enjoyed it. It's a good show, and everybody have a good night. Y'all make sure that you stay safe. And I'll see everybody in the morning.